Welcome back to the State of the Arc podcast. My name is Mike.
My name's Kaine.
This is our second episode of our Nier Gestalt / Replicant. Really, it's the other way around. It's more replicant.
It's more replicant than
More
Gestalt
replicant than Gestalt.
at this point. Now, last episode was 50-50. Now it's like 80-20, and it's going to be 100% replicant.
Yeah, because the remaster's out.
It's out.
It's been out for a few weeks.
Yeah.
And people should have been able to buy it, play it a little bit, catch up to where we said to play to last time. So we were saying play to ending A. Mm-hmm. And so that's a lot of game to cover.
It is.
I am planning on getting through that in this discussion, but what that's going to mean is that there's more of the philosophical and maybe like character arc analysis that will probably have to be saved for later, and I'll explain why in a minute. And this will probably be more focused on just summarizing the events and talking about maybe some of the technical execution of the scenes, this led to this and this was handled well, or, that sort of thing.
Right.
Just to get through events, because after you finish with ending A, and this is common in Yoko Taro games, but in particular with Nier, you kind of go back and replay the game again, but you get new perspective from different characters. In Automata, which most people have played, you'll play as 2B through the first run, you get to the ending A, and then you go back and play basically the same bosses, almost like the same game again, but as 9S this time, where you see it from a different lens and it changes how you look at things. And then you take over as A2 and you get like the actual ending after that, right? And it's not quite exactly the same in this. You don't ever play as anyone other than the main character.
The Nier, yeah.
But, like for example, Kaine is a character we're going to learn a lot more about moving into the B ending on the second playthrough.
Yeah.
So a lot of that stuff's going to be next time. And we're just going to be summarizing the events, which a lot of them will be more or less the same events again. But we'll just talk about the differences.
It was hard to know how to break this game up.
It's tough to talk about.
Because we could have just done ending A was podcast 1, ending B is podcast 2. But it's not, you'd be retreading too much of the same ground.
Yes.
So we'll probably do, for the next one, we'll probably do endings B and C or something like that. You know, because it's weird splitting games like this up because you're just retreading the same ground over and over.
Yes, and there will be differences. So we'll point out here and there where you get some new scenes or something different. But like you're saying, we would be summarizing the same events again. So we're just going to get through the summary this time.
Yeah.
And then we'll get through, like I said, more of the philosophical stuff next time. So that's the plan for today. Remember, if you would like to support the show, bring it back to a weekly show, which is getting very close. We're getting very close to hitting that goal.
Close, yeah.
Check out our Patreon and Subscribestar pages. If you've appreciated the work that we've been doing here, you've enjoyed the podcasts, and you want to see it become a weekly show, we're getting close. Remember, those who do support on either of those platforms get an additional monthly podcast where we field questions and topics from the audience. There's also voting rights and updates and other things that are exclusive to those platforms. So go and check them out. Links are in the description. And let's jump into this. So
we left Seafront.
Yes. Before we jump into that, into where we left off, I do want to say that I finally had a chance to sit down and play the new Replicant Remaster version 1.22 billion, whatever. So I finished, I think it was like on Monday night or Tuesday night this week, I finished Gestalt ending A.
Yeah.
And I was like, nice, okay. Like I got through where I said we're going to get through. Let me install this game and actually play it a little bit, right? By the way, I think I have to mention, because we received that from Square Enix. We received a digital copy of Replicant from Square Enix. I have to mention, it's like a legal thing, I have to mention that we received that product from Square Enix. It was
now you know. Congrats.
They gave us a copy of the game.
Yes.
So there you have it.
Thanks to them, but it does not affect our opinion of whether the story works and gels.
This is the reason why we're no longer...
I feel like we also have to say that.
It's the reason we're no longer Nintendo ambassadors, I think. Because they sent us a Switch and a couple games, and we weren't necessarily kind to them. The funny thing is that if I reviewed the Switch today, I would be glowing praise. The Switch is my favorite console in a long time.
It's
now,
really good. Well, because when it first came out, there was like 6 games, and it was like, I mean, the games were fun, you know. There was a couple good ones.
Breath of the Wild.
And Odyssey, right? Oh, no, Odyssey
came out later. So at the time that I reviewed it on this channel, they had like that game that was, it was like, what was that game? It was a party game where it was supposed to showcase the gyro. 1-2 switch.
Yeah.
And then we reviewed like Star Fox
it filled its purpose.
Zero.
That was it. That was Wii U, though.
That was Wii U.
But the review was, you know, not glowing, I suppose.
You didn't love the game.
I didn't love it.
And
you liked it more than I did, right?
I thought it was okay.
Anyways, point being, we're gonna be very fair, despite the fact that they gave us the game. Thanks.
You're gonna get a legit thought on this, a genuine thought. It's not they're not paying for us to talk about the game, right?
Exactly.
But we are thankful to them for getting.
I did want to bring this up though, because I read this in my research. The number 1.22474487139, which is the official title of this game.
Yes.
It says it is the approximation of the square root of 1.5.
Yes.
And my note is, I bet Tetsuya Nomura wishes he thought of that. With his this is how very Kingdom Hearts-esque to call this title, and that's not the last time I'm going to say that today, by the way. There's a lot of similarities that I see between these two people. But the idea that this is a 1.5, this isn't just a remaster. Like there's tons of additional content.
Yeah.
There is it's more of a 1.5 HD remix
than it is like a port, an HD port.
Yeah, just a pure,
even like a pure remake, right? Because I think the way that it's gotten so muddy, like the way that the industry uses remaster or remake in their titles, or what they call
confusing for your average person.
And like it got even more crazy with the Final Fantasy VII remake. And so like it's even hard to discuss like what a remake is, because nobody seems to have the same definition. So here's the way I think about it. The way I had always thought about it was a remake is literally rebuilding the game from zero
from
in
nothing.
a new engine.
You're not just retexturing,
No, you're like you recreate the assets.
Yeah.
You are building it in a new engine
from ground up. Right, because that remake, you're making the game again.
Yes.
As if you had never made it before.
But it has nothing to do with like, we're going to change like core aspects of the experience. It's like, no, we're going to rebuild this game as it was, but just in this new engine with new assets that will look better, that will feel better to play.
Right.
That was what remake had meant.
Yeah.
I mean, consistently.
Well, the word because otherwise it's just a make.
Yes.
They just made Final Fantasy VII again.
Yes.
It's not they didn't remake it.
Yes.
They just made it again.
Made it
and it's different.
differently. Anyways, and then some people would point to like the technical definition of the word remake, and it means to make something again or differently. It's like that's not what it means words can mean something different within the context of this or that organization or industry or whatever.
Yes.
So anyways, not to get too in the weeds on that, but the point is that I would have considered this more of a remake of Nier Replicant than a remaster of it, because it is being built in a new engine, and many of the assets, I think all of them have been rebuilt.
Yes, they've been including, and this is crazy because I noticed this because I played this as well. The voices are different.
The voice acting.
They redid the voices.
Yeah.
All of them.
And the music.
Are completely
all
redone.
The music is redone too.
It's not just a remaster. It's not.
No. So, but the way that Yoko Taro looks at it, which is getting to your point about the naming convention is that he kind of considers it something in between a remaster and a remake.
Fair enough.
So that's why it's a 1.5, which is where the title comes from. So, it's a version upgrade, I guess, is maybe the most technically accurate way of putting it.
Yeah.
But it is the same game, story content-wise, though there is added content to it. But it follows more or less the same beats. And the only difference really is technical polish. And for the most part, it's really, really, really good. Like, I am a very, I guess my thought on remakes in general is I like them to be as close to or as faithful to the original experience as possible.
I would hope.
I don't really understand the point personally of like radically changing a game and remaking it. And you know, I'm not going to talk at length about why I feel that way. I think I have in the past. But that's pretty much what this is, right? Like it's just like the gameplay in particular, right? But I guess, okay, sorry. I remember the point I was getting to with that. So usually, or not always, but at least recently, with re-releases of things like Xenoblade Chronicles or a lot of other things.
Like Twilight Princess HD.
Yeah. A lot of times I'll kind of point to the original and be like, this new one is not the same thing.
I know what you mean
as
with
the
Chronicles,
original.
but the art style's quite different.
I talked a lot about the art style,
I remember that.
right? However, in that case, in Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition's case and in Nier Replicant's case, it cannot be argued that the experience of playing the game is so much better in the new version that I cannot possibly recommend playing the original now.
Now that it exists, that's true.
It's just like there are other elements, maybe whether it be, the music in the original is done this way versus this way, and I think that this is better, or maybe in the case of Shadow of the Colossus, for instance.
Yeah, I was this is closer to that type of a style of a remaster.
The way that they color graded some of that game took away from its atmosphere.
Right.
And so I would say to some people, at least for me, I actually like playing like the remaster on PS3 of Shadow of the Colossus versus the remake of Shadow of the Colossus on PS4. Just because some of the things, even though it's phenomenally done,
it's a very well done.
There's just like a piece of its spirit that I feel like it didn't quite translate over.
Sure.
So even if I have things like that with Nier, the gameplay is so much better. And it's same for Xenoblade Chronicles. The gameplay is so much better that like I would do nothing but recommend play. I would never even say touch the PS3 version. No. Only play this.
You know what's funny? I kind of preferred some of the voice acting from the previous game as well.
Yeah.
But you know, it is what it is. This is a very good, high quality remaster.
It's unbelievable because like I remember, because one of the weird things about the original Nier is like you get tutorials. By like attacking and fighting, and it's like you'll get kind of like the words pop out of them. Sometimes you collect
and then
words.
The screen will show up.
Sometimes you'll pop up and it'll give you a tutorial that you can access about how to do this
several
move.
Pages long or something.
It's like, why didn't you tutorialize that? Like, why'd I have to earn it by fighting? It's a weird idea.
Right, it's different.
But anyways, I remember getting the counter attack tutorial. I was like, oh, you can do counter attacks. I assume that just means you block at the right timing and you can counter.
Sure.
And I was just never able to consistently counterattack in the original Nier. Not consistently enough to make it like a reliable part of my tool set in combat. I just rolled away.
Right, you just avoid
versus like trying to block. And with Replicant, it's like I am just freaking bam, bam, counter, on bosses, on regular enemies, all the time. And it's just like, they have tightened the gameplay experience to such a degree that it's just like, nah, don't bother playing the original. This is it. Like you're playing this game 80% of the time you're playing it, and this is just such a vastly superior way to do it.
And for the additional content, because there's an extra whole section of the game they added here that wasn't in the original, it follows the spirit of what the other quests and everything were, that it fits perfectly. Like, I don't feel like it's necessarily like a new thing. It just fits right in. They could have done some weird stuff there.
Yeah.
Because it's risky when you start adding like a new dungeon, you know, into a game that wasn't there before.
Right.
But it fits very well, actually.
Yeah. So, big recommend. I mean, maybe I'll do a review of Nier Replicant version 1.222 something, whatever. Maybe I'll do an official review on the channel. I don't think it'll be necessary because we've talked about it so much on this podcast, but I recommend it wholeheartedly, and especially to play it over the original, even though there are things about the original I like better. And so I want to talk about a couple of differences that I picked up on. Because I didn't play that far in the Replicant yet. I basically got out of the Lost Shrine for the first time. So you go rescue Yona and get Vice.
Oh, so way early.
I kind of played just up to that point.
Okay.
But I already noticed several differences. So remember in the first cutscene at the end of it, the camera kind of pans and it has either the Tokyo Tower in the Japanese version
I was gonna bring
or the Empire State Building.
Yes.
And I think they had others.
There was another, and we didn't know this because I played Japan, it had Tokyo Tower, you played the American, it had
the Empire State Building.
But in the comments of our last video, people from Europe were commenting saying they had like Big Ben or a clock tower of sorts.
Yeah.
And in Nier Replicant 1.22, you can switch the language that you're playing the game in or the region, and you can have any of those. You can play with where it's Big Ben, or it doesn't change anything in the game.
Well, that's the weird thing is that they have all of these different buildings for different language regions.
Yes.
But they didn't differentiate in English between American and European.
Yeah.
So it's like you get Big Ben, and that's the only.
There is no Eiffel Tower.
There's no Empire
State Building anymore. That's true.
In the French version, you'll get the Eiffel Tower. In the German version, you get a German building. You get Tokyo Tower in the Japanese version, but the English version is only Big Ben.
It's England,
which is kind of weird.
That is weird. That's different.
And like again, like does it really mean anything to the story? Where this is taking place? I don't think so. I think it's just relating it to the region in which the game is being sold in. So that was probably the first difference that I noticed. The second is when you go back to Yona after kind of the first day where Popola sends you to get some mutton and some like medicinal herbs, you go back and you tell her the story about the lunar tear, right, the flower. Now in the original game, I mean maybe it's different in the Japanese version. You can correct me if that's the case, but at least in Gestalt. She's talking about how she had this weird dream about like a pink goat or something like this. She had this weird dream.
Yona?
It was really weird, yeah.
She talks about a dream about a tree.
Later, but here in this cutscene, she talks about some kind of dream she had about a pink goat. And Papa Nier is like, that's weird. Let me tell you a story about this lunar tear. It gives you any wish. Right, so it's about wishing on this flower, and it'll grant any wish that you want. And she's like, "Oh, could it cure my sickness?" And he's like, "Yeah, if you wish on it, it could." In this version, Brother Nier says it's very valuable. The flower is very valuable. You can sell it for a lot of money,
and then you could buy medicine.
You could buy medicine.
Yeah, that was actually the Japanese version.
Really,
that's closer to the Japanese.
Okay,
version
so
that
then
I played.
the Gestalt PS3 version changed what they say.
Yes.
Which is really interesting.
Well, I did notice that many times. There are many places where they change literally what they're saying. Many
in the
places.
Localization.
Too many for me to point out, but I have some notes.
Okay, so yeah.
But yes, quite often.
We should go into that a little bit. And I do remember reading in some of the research I was doing that the localization team, this time around, they changed a lot.
Yeah.
But I would assume it's probably in the attempt for greater accuracy.
To get closer to the Japanese. That's what I have noticed in playing 1.22, is that it seems to be closer to what I had originally played. But even still, because I'm playing with Japanese voices, but I'm still just reading the English text.
Yeah.
And the English text is more or less a transcription of the Gestalt, the Americanized, localized version. And I'm hearing the Japanese and I'm reading the English text and I'm thinking, these are not the same. These are not the same. It would take me too long to actually play the game in Japanese reading it as well. I do, for clarity for this podcast, I'm reading the English, right? So I'm actually getting what's going on. But I can't, because I'm doing both, and I do know Japanese, I can tell the differences there. And there are a lot of differences, tons. Like for one of them in specific, Papa Nier is, the English version, Nier is a lot, we'll get into this later.
Okay.
He's a lot gruffer. Like there's some differences in the presentation, and especially as they talk to Kaine. I'd have to kind of rack my brain for some of those.
Because there is a
Yona specifically.
There is a Japanese Gestalt So, like, where the father Nier character is speaking Japanese is what you're talking about, and like the differences.
I'm talking about the American. I keep saying Gestalt because I'm just saying the American versus Japanese.
Oh, okay.
I'm saying Gestalt meaning American.
Okay,
but
the American. The difference between the American Gestalt and the Japanese Replicant is what you're talking about. Okay.
But even within 1.22, if you're just switching the audio tracks from English to Japanese, you're getting
something different.
Pretty not super different. It's not altering the story greatly, but you are getting some differences, some like real differences.
Interesting.
And especially the way Nier talks and the way he, like his level of like respectfulness and politeness is a lot greater in Japan versus in English. He's a lot more willing to, be disrespectful, I suppose, like to some degree, especially towards the very end of the game. I'm talking like Shadowlord end of the game.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Okay. Aside from those things, because that's about as far as I played. Like I said, the whole soundtrack has been redone.
Yes, yeah.
And this is one thing, probably one of two things that I don't like about the remaster. And I think this is just true of music in general. Music's hard because, especially in a PS3 game, it's like these recordings are already pretty high quality.
They were really good.
They're really, really good at how they are. And so when you re-record something that somebody's heard and grown attached to, even the subtle differences will feel wrong.
Yeah.
And that's how it felt to me. Now, what I really like about the definitive version of Xenoblade Chronicles is they did do that. They totally remade all the music in it, but they give you the choice and the options to turn on the original soundtrack or the new version.
I love it when they just give you freedom like that.
Yes.
I love that.
I would be totally happy with them having done this, and I would even like to listen to the differences if I could then choose the original soundtrack. Yeah. Because I do feel the original soundtrack is better. And part of that is because I played the game a long time ago. I listened to the soundtrack over the years. And so I have an attachment to that original music, the way that it was recorded. Yeah. But the other part of it is, as a music producer and somebody who has like some experience doing that, I really do feel like a lot of the choices made, and this isn't true of everything. There are a couple of places, like in the very first little like tutorial battle, they use some strings and they heighten the music a little bit in ways that I thought were really cool in the new version.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, oh, that's cool. I like that addition,
Nice.
But for my favorite pieces, like the town theme that Devila sings, it's not even, it doesn't touch the original.
Yeah, the original was so serene. Yeah, I actually agree with that one. That's one of the, I didn't notice what you mentioned at the beginning of the game, but the Devila stuff is different.
Yeah, and then like the main kind of like, it would be like the overworld map theme if this were a traditional. Yeah. When you go to the Northern Plains,
and
there's a version of that song that's just like, oh, that just doesn't, it just sounds wrong. Like, I want, anyway, so if there's a patch eventually, which maybe there is now a mod, because I have the PC version, where I could just replace the original music, I'm 100% on board, like I said, with that this new version of the game is just way better.
Just completely.
But the only other problem I had, and this was more of a problem I had with Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition, was the change to the characters' faces and the way that they look.
Yeah.
And here's the weird thing, is I don't like that they keep doing this, because I like the style of the original Nier in terms of like the way the characters look, their faces, like the art style of the original. But in this case, I do not dislike almost anybody in their new model, except Kaine. Kaine looks totally wrong.
She looks way different. I actually liked it better, though.
You like the new one better?
I look at the new model, and I'm like, I think she looks, because I do a side-by-side, because I noticed, I was like, she looks quite different from before. But I look at it, and I'm just like, I don't know, I like it. I feel like it. She looks better.
I understand that like the reason why they tend to do this is probably to bring it in line with a more recent entry of that franchise.
Oh,
so,
yes.
like Xenoblade Chronicles and Xenoblade Chronicles 2 have a very different art style.
Yeah.
So they probably adjusted the definitive edition of the first game to match closer
the later.
so that they have more of a congruency between entries. Like, I get that, but I'm also one who really believes in preserving the original art as much as possible. When you're re-releasing something, it's my philosophy to make it as close to the original as possible as a means of preservation, because
exactly
those Wii discs are not going to last forever,
Yeah.
and so like people will not always have that game. So I love the concept of re-releasing games on a new platform.
Yes, and even up-resed, all that stuff. But
yes,
I agree with you.
But I like to preserve it as close to the original as possible, or at least offer the choice to do so.
At least offer the choice. Like, George Lucas doesn't even give you, okay, it's not his anymore. Disney. Actually, maybe they do give you the choice. Can you watch the 77 Star Wars even if you want to?
I thought so. I think that there were talks, or there was rumblings a little while ago that they were trying to do that, but a lot of the rights to the 1977 original Star Wars still lie with 20th Century Fox.
Okay.
And Disney is having a hard time getting those. And so there was some rumblings that they were looking to release an unaltered like Blu-ray of the original Star Wars trilogy.
For just preservation purposes and viewing history, I think that's important.
Yes. Because I'm sorry, I cannot watch Return of the Jedi where Darth Vader yells, "No!" and picks up the Emperor. I can't watch it. It's so offensive to me. I cannot watch it. And so
that was that for like one of the DVDs, I think.
Yeah. So it's like if there was a way to watch the unaltered original Star Wars trilogy, that would be my preferred way of doing it.
Yeah.
And I usually feel similarly about old video games too, which is why I'm always going to play the PlayStation 4 or whatever new release of Final Fantasy VII over the Final Fantasy VII remake.
Then the remake.
So in any case, all that aside, I think that they did a phenomenal job on Replicant version 1.22. It is, in the ways that count the most, it is a way better experience, and I would recommend playing this version over the original. I would just hope at some point there's a patch or a mod out there that can replace the original music. You can't really replace the original models, but maybe somebody can do something with Kaine's face to just like make it a little bit more like the original one. Yeah. But like I said, for the most of the other characters,
she has a lot more pointy features now.
Her whole face looks different. It would be like a deep faking Elijah Wood's face out of Lord of the Rings or something,
and just putting in someone else.
It's not like the other characters. I feel like they're close enough to the original idea, but they're maybe a little cleaner or done a little bit more in the style of Automata.
Right.
But they still look right to me. But Kaine is the only one that does not look right to me. But it's a small price to pay for a much better game.
Yeah.
Okay. Now we're done talking about the Replicant 1.22 for now. Let's get into summarizing what we played. So, like you were saying, we left off.
We left the
seafront, and we came back
with the shaman fish
with a letter.
And a letter
for Popolo.
Yeah.
From the mayor of Seafront.
Yeah.
And it was basically saying, I'm worried about the people of the Aerie. We haven't heard. We haven't heard from them in a long time. Concern about like losing contact with other settlements, right? So we're sent to go investigate.
Yeah. So this is it's funny because Kaine is not with us in Seafront, but in order to get to the Aerie, we kind of have to walk right past where she is. And for whatever reason, this is just how she lives her life, I guess, but she's just fighting tons of shades. Just like we come upon her and we're just like, oh, hey, you. And she's like, go away. She doesn't really care to follow us necessarily, but we help her kill all the shades. And she's like, well, maybe she didn't need our help. But she comes with us to the Aerie because we're like, hey, we're hunting that big shade thing, so who knows? Maybe it'll be here. Like, let's go. Maybe it has a sealed verse, right? And so she comes with us, and we go to the Aerie, and the thing shows up, and we're fighting it, and I don't know how much detail we should go into about it, but she kills it. But the most fascinating thing happens as we're fighting it. the thing starts to like speak to Kaine like directly.
Yes.
She can understand what it's saying, and which is not true for, at least for what we're doing right now for the game with all the shades. We don't know what they're saying. We can hear sounds.
This is the first indication that Kaine can understand the language of shades, or that there is a language really to be understood.
Yeah, that they're saying a thing other than just like it's like a crazy, like shrill, almost robotic sound, almost like a grinding stone or something.
Yeah, it's really weird.
Yeah. So, but it's her grandmother, and it says, "Hey," well, I don't know if it is her grandmother. I don't think it is, but it says, "Hey, I'm your grandmother. Let's, it would be so easy if you just died right now. It would help everyone out a lot if you died."
Just give up.
At first, she's kind of, it seems like she's kind of hearing it a little, but she, comes to her senses, and she's like, "My grandma wouldn't tell me to die. Like, you're an idiot. Like, go away. I'm going to kill you now."
Yeah.
But in her tirade, in her response to this thing, this is where they start bleeping out what she's saying
in Japanese.
A lot. And I got so curious as to what she said. I went on YouTube. I found a Japanese. I found that exact scene. I found the Japanese, and wouldn't you know it, they bleep out the text as well. It's X's and zeros and triangles. It's not, because I was like, what did they say? At least they're going to transcribe it. No, because if they told you what she said, you would be like, oh, it's not that bad. So they had to, even in the text, they had to like bleep it out in the text. So you don't know necessarily what she said unless you can read her lips, which I did try to do. She says something yaro, and yaro is a really rude way to refer to somebody, like jerk or idiot. But usually you'd say baka yaro, but she's like, it's different. She's not saying baka yaro, she's saying like something else yaro, but they bleep it out, and I couldn't really get it. I couldn't get what she was saying. But the bleeping is so fascinating because as I'm playing it with the English subtitles, it's just saying the English words right under it.
Yeah.
And of course, the way they translate it is very, very different. Lots of swear words and such.
Well, that was part of the localization team's sort of prerogative. They sort of took some liberties there.
And I can tell.
Because they said this would be comical or funny. It wouldn't come across the same way in English. So let's just have her actually swear and not bleep it out.
Right.
And they kind of went back and forth a little bit on this, and eventually the English localization team just kind of took it.
The bleeping's weird, because you play hours and hours of a game, and all of a sudden you're hearing a bleeped out word.
Yeah.
Like, what the heck? Like, that's weird. It comes out of nowhere. It makes no sense. And you're kind of wondering if, like, there was a mistake. If it weren't for her clearly screaming and being very upset, I'd be like, my game just screwed up. Like, that shouldn't have happened. That wasn't supposed to happen.
That actually just reminded me that, remember the Gestalt English version title screen starts out with her tirade where she's screaming at Vice. That's not in the new re-release.
I noticed that as well, it's crazy.
They took that part out. It
just goes right into the game.
Yeah.
Or the trailer.
That was kind of interesting that they decided to remove that from this new version. That was another difference I noticed.
But because this is more like an international version, right? Yeah. Everyone's playing the same game now.
Everyone's getting the same one.
Yeah, the same experience, just different localizations, right?
Yeah.
And so she ends up just like, she fights it, and we kind of do a finishing blow. And I can't remember exactly what happens, but she passes out after the fight, right? And
she's more or less on kind of the brink of death.
Yeah.
Is what it's insinuating, and where she can kind of like let go and just die. And main character kind of comes up and rouses her back.
Yeah, and is like, come back. And she was seeing the light and kind of reaching towards it, and he ended up pulling her out, right?
Well, yeah, because she had sort of fulfilled the only thing that she really wanted left to do was to take revenge on this monster.
Yeah.
And once that was done, it was like, well, I don't have a reason to live anymore.
Right, she was just giving up.
So she was just going to give up.
Yeah.
And then main character comes in and rouses her awake. Now this is the first place where I noticed where it would probably be more effective for a younger Nier character than an older one. The dialogue just works better.
Yeah, I have something to say about the Japanese in this.
But so there was a couple things I noticed that he says here. One of them, I don't have the direct quote, but
you don't get to decide who lives and who dies. She's a life with meaning, worth, and we're gonna save her. Everyone has something to live for, even Kaine.
He's talking about how like everything and everyone has value, like every life has value and should be protected.
Yeah.
This attitude about life for the main character before the time jump that we're going to get to later, right? The time skip.
The 4 year, yeah.
When he still has Yona at home, and the way he sort of like talks to Weiss about different cultures and the importance of life,
and everyone's got something. Worth,
protecting, and he's a lot. He's kind of like he's got kind of a big heart.
Yeah,
and is portrayed here early on as like a really sort of like, what would you call it? Lawful, good, moral type person, right?
Yeah.
But then he goes over and he's like rousing her awake, and she's like, "What's going on?" And he says I think Weiss says something like, something about your friends, like not abandoning your friends, or I can't remember exactly what he says.
A true warrior would fight. They would give all in the service of their friends.
Friends?
But then Papa Nier, in my version I was playing, turns to her and goes,
"Yes, you and I are friends now."
It works way better as a kid.
If that's a 15 or 16-year-old, which I think is the age of the brother Nier character before pre-time skip, that feels like something a kid would say.
Exactly.
Not something a 39-year-old would say.
Do you know what it feels like? Do you know what game can you predict what I'm thinking? What game does that sentence belong in?
Maybe.
It's not Nier.
I don't know.
Is it one from Tetsuya Nomura? What's it called?
Kingdom Hearts.
Anyways, so that... Just so Kingdom Hearts, But I do have some insight into the Japanese here because I was like, that's freaking weird. Yeah. Did he really say like, we're friends now? Yeah. And it's not that weird of a thing to say, I guess, in general, but in this situation, it just came off in a very strange way, and the drama of how he was like proclaiming friendship to somebody else.
Well, and again, in the Gestalt version, it's a 39-year-old man to a 17-year-old girl.
Yeah. So, but it was even still weird playing Replicant. It was still weird. It was just like a little too much cheese. Like this, put this in Kingdom Hearts. This doesn't belong in Nier. This is weird. The word for friend in Japanese is tomodachi. Tomodachi, it has like two kanji. It means like the tomo meaning friend, and dachi, which is like tachi, which means like a group, like multiple, like plurality, whatever. So it's like an inner group friend thing of you go watch a movie together, or the people you hang out with in high school,
like a close
that's tomodachi.
knit.
Yeah. The word they use here is nakama, which nakama has been translated as friend. It does mean friend in a much looser sense, maybe more of a professional sense. Nakama means more like a coworker or a colleague. You would say nakama for colleague, or like a comrade, right? Nakama would mean something like that. Like you share the same like goals. Like your purpose is the same, therefore your nakama tachi or whatever. You're together in a different way, as opposed to tomodachi, meaning like, so nakama is more goal focused, I think, and then a tomodachi is more like emotional, or more like, I don't know, it just means the friend that you and I are thinking of when it's translated in English. We're thinking of tomodachi. That's not the word used. The word was more like colleague or comrade or something like that. And so that makes the scene not quite as weird in Japanese.
I can see the difficulty for localizing that though, because it would be weird to
comrade?
say. It would be weird to say comrade too.
It was weirder.
Like it would make more sense for him to refer to her as that, because that's more what they are.
Exactly.
But it would be weird at the moment of death, trying to convince someone to live, to tell them, yes, you're my comrade now.
Yes.
Like it wouldn't
ally.
seem...
It just...
Ally might have been good.
Ally
We're
might
allies
have been.
now, but I still don't think that's
But you're bringing someone back from death.
Yeah.
Friend
I
is
can see
better,
why they had to pick friend.
Yeah.
There's really no other words.
For all the Japanese speakers out there, I understand nakama does mean friend, but there is, as you will know and people will say in the comments, there is a specific nuance to it that is quite different from what you and I heard when we heard the word friend here, and made it sound just a little bit cringy, just a little bit.
That's really interesting.
Yes.
I'm glad that you are here to point that out, because
and nakama is used regularly throughout the game, like Grimoire Weiss, or whenever other people are talking about friendship in general, most of the time they're saying nakama. They're not saying tomodachi. They're saying colleague, comrade,
which makes
ally,
sense, because they're always like kind of like ribbing each other and making fun of each other, or like bantering. They don't ever feel like really close friends.
No,
it's just Emil is more
we're working together,
working for that, looking for that from them.
Yes,
and
Emil.
like Emil and Kaine, I would say, are that.
They by the end of the game, they had approached that type of relationship.
Yes,
yeah.
But like the rest of them, it's like, yeah, I've been traveling with you. We've been together for a long time. We're comrades or allies would feel more correct, but it also isn't quite intimate enough to represent what it is.
Yeah.
So friend is really the only word.
That's what they got.
That's interesting.
That's what they got.
Very interesting.
So that's good stuff. Yeah. So that, well, because the thing, even if you play the game with Japanese audio, okay, you're not hearing it, but you're still reading it. Just know that it's a little less weird in Japanese.
Yeah.
But after that, so during that battle, this shade swings its tail, or we throw it, or I can't remember exactly what happens, but through us fighting this shade, it knocks down a few capsule homes of the people that live in the Aerie. And we know how those people live. They're very secluded, they stay in their houses, basically, as much as they can. And so there was likely someone in that capsule as it just tumbles down the cliff.
Yeah.
That person quite likely is no longer alive.
Is dead, yeah.
Yeah. So there's some serious collateral damage, and if you remember the Aerie, they're very xenophobic. They don't want anyone from the outside coming in.
Yes.
And they will let you know very quickly.
And I would have assumed, and I mean this ends up being the case later when we return. We return to each area many times. But, I had assumed that because of that collateral damage, that the people of the Aerie would be more or less resentful that we ever showed up, instead of thankful that we saved them from the monster.
Yeah.
That's kind of like what I expected to happen. And I didn't really stick around there, but I did revisit doing like side quests and things. And those people actually start saying things like, oh, that poor girl, referring to Kaine, or like, if only we had, a measure of the courage that she has. And so it was like, okay.
They're starting to come around a little.
That was not what I expected. Okay, like the people of the Aerie can at least recognize like what we were trying to do, despite the collateral damage. So they get a point of recognition for that.
They get
I just want to make sure and say that because
a free half point.
We'll get to side quests a bit later. I do not like the side quests in this game, but I was glad that I did them, if only for some of these little tidbits like this.
Yes,
that you pick up
I agree with that.
by revisiting areas and talking to NPCs and things.
A lot of the real depth of this game does come in between places, whether it's from Grimoire Weiss or from the people you talk to. It comes, through the mundane stuff that the game has to offer.
So, anyways, main character convinces Kaine to come with him, find kind of a new purpose in life, right? Now that her revenge is fulfilled on this monster. And so she decides to travel with us. So we go back to main village, and she decides, or she tells you, she informs you she's not going to go in.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, why not? Like, come on in. And she's like, no, I'll just stick outside. And this is because she knows she's not going to be accepted by almost anybody, right? Yeah. Like, she knows that she's not welcome there, even if Nier might be a bit oblivious to this fact. She knows she's not welcome.
Which, once again, goes better for young Nier than old man Nier, who would be a little more understanding of what's going on.
Yeah, like socially aware. Right?
Exactly, yeah.
So anyways, you go back in and talk to Popola. We're sent to a city called Facade after this. And Facade is a desert city that has a radically different culture.
It is fascinating.
From anywhere else in the world of Nier, right?
Yep.
And there's a lot to dive in with this. And like I said, we're mostly focusing on summarizing today. We're going to get into some of the nuances and the world-building technicalities and the philosophical things probably next time. So there's probably some things we'll miss today that we'll cover next time. Yeah. But Facade, like you're saying, is one of the most interesting locations in the game. The whole society is really built and really focuses on a strict and immense set of rules and regulations. And so everything they do is adhering to some kind of rule or code and making sure that you're not breaking any rules by anything that you do. They're very conscious all the time of like, does this break a rule? Or that rule says I can't do that.
Yeah.
And the philosophy behind it, at least according to them, is what was the way that they put it? By knowing the rules, you understand your freedoms better, or something like that. Something to that effect.
Like there's beauty within the boundaries, the confines of.
Yeah. I understand my freedoms because of the rules.
Yes, I think that's how she
is
puts it.
the idea.
Yeah.
But they also have a very, very different language. And
way different.
And this is interesting. I kind of have two feelings. I'm kind of conflicted on how this was executed, because I really loved the concept of a society where I can't understand anything they say. But how do you tell the story? How do you learn about the culture without being able to communicate with anybody at all? And so what they end up doing is they have Weiss there who can more or less very quickly just learn how to interpret.
He understands like every language ever, apparently, He's very good at that.
And it takes him a minute.
Yeah.
So at first you find a young girl named Fira? And she doesn't speak, she's mute. So she communicates with some form of sign language
type,
which is what Weiss can interpret first.
Right.
So at first you're communicating only with this one girl who uses sign language, and Weiss is sort of like reading that and repeating to you what she's saying. That's kind of the idea, but Weiss very quickly, in my opinion, a little too quickly, is able to just learn the whole language and start. You can just talk to anybody.
And so it kind of undoes the coolness of what they were trying to do by
like what I would have rather seen. And this is a very particular nitpick. It's not like this ruins the experience. The facade sections of the game are some of my favorites, regardless of this thing. But I think there is a time skip, a 5-year time skip that happens. It would have been interesting if at the beginning you kind of have to rely on Fira to interpret what people are saying through the sign language. But when you come back 5 years later, Weiss has learned the language, and so Weiss can, like, you get this period of time elapsed where Weiss can remember it or whatever it takes to learn it. But anyways, that's a nitpick. But the reason it came to my mind is because it really highlights the difficulty in understanding people who have such not just a radically different language, but a different culture from you.
You could speak 1,000 tongues and still fail if you lack knowledge of another's culture.
And it can seem so alien and so weird. But what Taro is able to do through these sections is help the player slowly understand the culture and learn to like its people.
Yes.
It takes a while.
It takes a while.
At first, it seems really oppressive
and
it's,
rigid
and like
unforgiving
and just like, oh, this is dumb. Like it's just inefficient.
Yes.
It's what a stupid way to live.
Yes.
Is like the initial thought.
And with that, and he wanted you to think that, and he did a great job.
Yes.
Yeah.
And this is kind of like the whole, again, like thematic core of Nier, is that the conflicts we have are generally spawned from our misunderstandings.
Yes.
Whether it be cultural or just the inability to communicate or understand the intent that someone else has or what it is that someone really wants. And those misunderstandings lead us to fear the worst, and that fear is what drives us to fight or to hate someone else. And so, I had those feelings about the people of the Aerie, like I talked about in the last episode, where I did not like them at all.
Yes.
But I never got, you never really get an insight into the history of that town.
Not for them.
And understand why they're that way.
You can kind of imagine how that happened, though, with the way the world is, how dangerous the world is, and how secluded they became. But for Facade, there was a lot more explaining necessary as to how that happened.
You actually spend enough time with them, and they are...
And the people, they actually will talk to you.
An open enough a society to share, their, sort of cultural heritage with you, so that you can understand it better. And once you do, you kind of like these people, and you want to help them out and do their quests and things like that. Even when they have really, really strange requests. Like one of the quests is a villager or one of the people, NPCs in Facade, says, I want to buy something special for my daughter for her birthday, but rule number 15,000 whatever says that I can't spend money on my daughter's birthday. So it's like okay, I can help you out with that. What is it that you need? What is it that you want to buy? And she says, well, according to rule number 87,000 whatever, I can't tell you directly what it is. Now again, that's more or less just to be funny. That probably wouldn't be a legitimate rule, but the important thing, because they're trying to make a quest out of it, and it's trying to be lighthearted. But the point is that they can't tell you what to buy.
Yeah.
You have to they have to give you hints, and you have to just sort of like intuit from that hint that they want a watermelon or something, right? And then you go buy the watermelon and bring it to her and fulfill the quest. But what's funny is that Vice says something like, it must bother you, like the way that these people live. It is such a stupid way to live. And I think a lot of people would probably feel that way about such particular rules, and even rules that conflict with each other, just this endless list of rules, and how can you keep them straight? And what main character says back is, it does bother me, but I trust that they have a reason for it. Something meaningful that we don't yet understand.
See, you may not know what the reasons are, but the little that you do know is, well, okay, in Nier it's a little different, but we'll get to that later. The little that you do know is that these are humans, right? These are human people.
Yes.
So given that these are humans, there must be a reason why they're doing it.
Yes.
It's like respecting the fact that they are what you are.
Yes.
And you don't do things without a reason, so they must not either.
You know, I think that's something that humankind as a whole has like very, very slowly learned to do better and better over the years.
I hope so.
I've been reading a novel called Shogun.
I know that one.
Which is about essentially, I don't know this for a fact, but I think it's basically Neo, but like a more technically accurate version of that story.
Okay, yeah.
Where you don't have the like fantasy elements of it.
Yeah,
but the first like white samurai.
Right. In Japan.
Blackthorn, who was an English sailor, but he sailed with, I think, like Swedish or Norwegian ship,
remember.
And they land there. But like the way that it's written, obviously it's a fictional novel that's fictionalizing what was probably like a true event, right? So it's probably not perfectly accurate. But I would assume the research into explaining this was historically accurate to how the cultures were, right?
Sure.
And the way that people viewed people from other cultures, it was a lot less seeing them as a human man and woman like me than would be acceptable like today, right? Like today it's very much about acceptance and diversity and that sort of thing, and like seeing everyone as equals. And back then it's just like people didn't do that. It was like, you're not from my tribe even, you're not from my country. You're a Frenchman and I'm an Englishman. It's like we are mortal enemies.
We are enemies,
right? Like, and the way that they speak about the Spanish or whatever, it's just, or the Portuguese, like everybody freaking hated each other who were not from the same culture. And like when Blackthorn sees some of the ways that the Japanese live, he's just like, this is like, can they really think, like, can they really be built like me? And the Japanese say the same thing about his body, right? They're like examining his body and like, ooh, is he built like a man? You know, so like he's different from us. Like, what makes their hair like that? What makes, you know? So in any case, there's like a natural, I feel like, tendency, this tribalism that human beings have, and a lot of that is being pointed out here. But like you're saying, realizing these are humans underneath it and spending time with them, I really came to like Facade, and I came to like the people of Facade.
Kaine mentions, right as you go in, she's like, hey, she didn't come in with us, she kind of stands out by the entrance, but they recognize her right away, and they're like, oh, open the doors, it's Kaine, because she saved somebody. Was it Fira or the prince?
One of the children of the village or something.
She saved somebody from that village from the wolves, which is a very big threat to them, some years back, and they've let her in ever since. And they like her, and so she was not willing to walk into, you know, what's the place where Devil and Poplar are? I can't remember.
The village.
The village. They she doesn't feel comfortable walking into where Nier lives. But she's fine with these people, and she even mentioned it herself. She's like, what kind of screwed up place must this be to where they accept me? Right? But they don't care about her. In fact, in general, they don't think that foreigners need to be subject to their laws, which is unusual for culture. So it's one of their biggest redeeming like qualities. Yeah, they have some crazy type of system, but if you don't want to be part of it, you don't have to be.
Yeah.
And they don't, they don't expect you to live like them. So a lot of the rules are just like, what is it? Like you can't speak the language of Facade unless you were born in Facade or something like that. And that's why Fira, I think she can talk, but she's not allowed to as per the rules.
Yeah.
And so, but we can talk because we haven't accepted, we're not part of their culture,
Right.
we're not part of their village, and nobody cares. They're not trying to force their rules on us.
Yeah.
So I think that's fascinating. But the biggest thing for me to think like, oh, maybe these guys aren't so bad, or maybe this isn't such an awful system or place to live, is the fact that they accept Kaine without reservation.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, you saved someone, therefore you're a good person, therefore you can come here.
Yeah, it's really interesting that she won't go into Seafront, she won't go into the village,
Anywhere
she won't go to the Aerie.
Yeah.
She will at least step foot into
a little
Facade.
bit. Yeah, she'll show her face there.
Yeah. And so
and they are so accepting of
all the places in the world where it's the most rigid, the most bound by regulation and rule, the least would seem likely to accept Kaine is the one place
it's the most open place for people, for humans, human interaction. Yeah. So
really interesting.
That right there made me kind of think, wow, this is what a way to live. Like, but seriously, this is fascinating. And a lot of these people from Facade came from other places.
Yeah.
Facade is kind of a place where there's a hint that Fira or somebody else might have been born with some type of disfigurement, right?
Oh, sure.
And going to Facade allows you to live your life without anyone ever seeing your face. And Facade is, I think, Latin or something. It means mask, or it means to cover something, right? So Facade, they're all masked up. And maybe people who would be outcasts in other villages come here on purpose to be like everyone else. They're all wearing masks, and no one knows what anyone looks like. And so, except the prince doesn't wear one. I think that's interesting. But yeah, they're all totally covered, and I think it's fascinating right there. So it's almost as if it's like a welcoming place for people who don't belong elsewhere, like Kaine.
Yeah. So we get there, and we're going to, of course, the main goal is to find sealed verses, but we're going to go talk to the king.
Yeah.
And find out that the king, now I remember, the king of Facade had the black scroll. And so we went there to look for hints to see if they had found anything.
That's
like
why
a
we
cure.
went there, because there was a rumor that they had something that was going to be a type of cure.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that maybe they have an answer for how I can help treat Yona's disease.
Because they've been researching it for like years.
Right.
Yeah.
So the king had recently passed away from the illness, so he's no longer alive. And his young son was going to take his place as the king of Facade, but he's gone missing into their temple. I think it's called the Baron Temple, but some kind of ceremonial temple on the other side of the desert. And they're worried about him, so we volunteer to go there and try and find him, because the rules state that their people can't enter to go find him. So it's like, well, we're not bound by the rules.
Rule 50,000 says if the prince or king is missing, we have to go look for him. Rule 80,000 says that you're not allowed to enter the temple. So the rules are in conflict, and there's a very comical scene where the guards are all standing around, huddling and talking and mentioning all the rules that are keeping them from doing anything.
Yeah.
No one can do anything.
Yeah.
They're completely bound. And Fira, I think she actually wants to come.
He was going to break a rule to go there.
But we were like, hold on.
We'll do it for you.
We'll do it. We'll take care of the whole thing.
So you go through that. It's a whole dungeon. And I'm just going to mention this now. I'll probably mention it throughout. But, Nier didn't get super high scores upon its original release. It was, I think on Metacritic it's like a 66, around
67,
there. Like a very mediocre score. Yeah. And I get it, especially now that I play Replicant right off the back of it in terms of just the feel of playing it.
Yeah.
But while I was playing it, especially in the middle of playing it, I kind of was used to it now. So it didn't feel awkward or bad anymore. But they do such a good job of mixing variety into the gameplay. Like every dungeon is different.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Every boss
the camera
is different.
angles are different.
Yeah.
And with the facade, with this one, with the temple, it's like every room you enter, there's a rule for the room.
Yeah.
And you have to follow the rule, where it's no jumping, no magic attacks, or no.
And they feel arbitrary.
No running. They do.
But that's kind of how Facade's rules are.
Exactly.
They feel like, oh, you just can't do this, and it feels like just because. But then you're learning about, it's like in the gameplay, in like figuring out the puzzle, you're becoming familiarized with the culture of Facade, which is awesome.
Yeah, I think it's awesome. This dungeon reminded me a lot of, and you're going to need to help me out here, the Square Enix game that is set in the same world as Final Fantasy Tactics with a character that was too old.
Vagrant Story.
Yes. Vagrant Story.
Yeah.
This dungeon specifically reminded me a lot of some of the parts of Vagrant Story, some of the puzzle parts.
There's a lot of
Vagrant
box
Story.
puzzles.
Yeah, the boxes and hiding behind things and moving things around.
Yeah.
It had that feeling. I wonder if they kind of based it off that, because you can tell a lot of these temples seem to be loosely based on a prior video game. Like Emil's mansion seems like a Resident Evil style.
Yes.
With the camera angles and with the doors and the mansion.
Yes.
Well, we'll get to that later, but it's almost like he picked a type of game to base whatever dungeon off of, and then he kind of followed that through for that dungeon.
Facade, I felt, was very Zelda-like.
It was very Zelda-like,
and
yes.
Even when you end up rescuing the prince at the end and he finds the mask he was there to look for, he goes, dun 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 dun,
yes,
and he like holds it up. And so it's like a direct homage to Zelda.
And it was Zelda, but the feeling, I got a lot of Vagrant Story.
Vagrant Story,
too,
yeah, I could see that too. But yeah, it is interesting that like, because games can become very monotonous, you build into like the core mechanics, a certain combat system or something like that. But sometimes I think you'll still run across a problem, and this was certainly true of games like Final Fantasy 13, where it's just so much of the same thing.
Yeah, and your mechanics aren't giving a diverse enough experience to the player.
To where it's like you play 40 hours of the same exact gameplay, it's going to get real boring.
But most games are like that.
Yes.
Most games are not like Nier, where they're switching it up.
Yes.
That's like very refreshing to me that they did
it's one of the huge positives that I give to Nier is its ability to mix up each new section to feel so different and so interesting that the game never feels boring. And it's also paced really well. It's like dungeons never outstay their welcome, cutscenes never overstay their welcome. Like there's a really good sense of rhythm to the game. But on top of that, it's like you're saying, part of the time you feel like you're playing Resident Evil, and part of the time you feel like you're playing Zelda, and part of the time you feel like you're playing Diablo or something.
Yes.
And so it's like it's like this really nice mix and match of styles.
Yeah. That helps like change the pace. This game is so well paced, and there's so many reasons for that we mentioned last podcast, how in between places you're getting essential dialogue as you're traveling.
Yes.
Makes the traveling seem less mundane, but it also, it allows for a depth of story without just sitting and watching cutscenes.
Yes.
And then during battle, you're getting that same kind of stuff. And then with this, the gameplay is so different that you're not getting bored from the same type of gameplay over and over.
Yeah.
Like it's just genius.
It's
I don't
really
know why
creative.
more games don't do this.
It's really creative.
Yeah.
And without having to introduce a new mechanic every time or introduce like a new way to play the game.
Yeah, it's
You're
pretty
still
intuitive.
Playing it the same way, but like the structure, the design of the level is such
and
to
the
where
camera
you
angle
feel like it's new. And so huge props to this game for accomplishing that. I think it's a really creative way to work with limited funds and limited timetable and kind of a limited tool set in terms of what you can do and make it interesting all the time. It's really well done. This game did not deserve a 66 on Metacritic.
No,
when it came out.
much higher. For many reasons, but story being among them. Like just that alone.
Like I said, after playing Replicant off the back of it, it's like I get it. I get that the gameplay could have been more fine-tuned or a little bit better in terms of the mechanics of movement and dodging and blocking and fighting. That's not the best action combat ever.
Right.
But there's so many other things that the game does like to such an insanely high level that to me it like just way more than makes up for it. Game certainly deserves no lower than an 8. in my opinion.
Yeah.
Even if you just weren't as into it as I was, I would give it higher than that. But anyways, you rescue the prince.
Yeah.
You get out of there and you go back, and it's like, okay, my father died. I can't help you. Sorry about that. But like, we accept you as like a member of our society. You're welcome here anytime. Is there anything I can do for you? Right? Like, I want to grant something. He more or less like commands you to.
You almost have to. Yeah.
To pick something that he can give as a reward for helping. And what the main character ends up asking for is for them to write a rule 0, which I would think supersedes every rule, right?
I would think so.
If anybody doesn't like a rule, the people can vote to erase that rule or change it or something like that. And he's like, all right, I can do that. Now, there was a couple of things that more on the philosophical side that I thought about with this, because they talk about it more as they're kind of running through the desert while they're leaving. And Nier kind of continually says things like, and I wrote this down, there are as many ways to view the world as there are people in it.
I imagine we'll come back to a whole new slew of rules.
Probably. But rules seem to work for them, so who are we to say otherwise?
Oh, come now.
There are as many ways to view the world as there are people in it.
Sure, yeah.
And because Vice keeps talking about like how ridiculous that society is, and Nier's the one kind of like defending it. And
he's
being
trying.
Like, you just don't understand it completely, and there are so many ways to view the world. It's interesting that he has that point of view, but like the first thing he asked for was a way to change the society.
I know, and I agree with you. Up to that point, I was like, this is great. He's accepting these people for who they are. He's accepting their culture and their society for what it is. Yet there is still a point where it's like, nope, you got to impose your
outside
your
view.
Democratic like moral principles on this country, and of course they accept it just right away and that's one of the fallacies of. The only reason I'll bring this up is because this is a direct theme of this, but it's one of the fallacies of the Iraq War in general, which is like, we're bringing them democracy. They're going to welcome it. As soon as we bring it up to them, they'll say, oh, that's a great idea. Why didn't we do that? Which is what happened here in Facade. So he kind of undercuts his own theme a little bit here by having that portion there. I did not love that.
Yeah, I didn't like that ended up being what he asks them to do, given that he seems to have this perspective.
Yeah, the understanding of why they are.
I know that they have a reason for it, even if I don't like it, that there's something meaningful we don't understand about this yet, and that there's as many ways to view the world as there are people in it. First thing that I'm going to dictate is that you create a way for people to change your society and impose more of my view of what a society should be. I felt like those were a little bit in conflict. Now, at the same time, people are in conflict, and people aren't perfect. So, you know, it's not to say that it's to say the main character is not a perfectly consistent in his moral compass, right? And that's how people are.
Which is normal, so especially for a young person.
You could say it's natural that he still does this, even if he says these things or wants to believe this way, maybe, that, you know, sometimes he's not always living that perfectly. So that's fine.
He is still trying to nudge people subtly towards his
And I think that's absolutely the way everybody is. And everyone's at a different degree of sort of acceptance of diversity or whatever versus, you know, holding to this is the right way to live.
Yeah.
Everyone's at a different place on that spectrum, and maybe main character is somewhere over here, but he's not perfectly over here, and nobody is perfectly over here, right? Everybody has that thing that they really believe strongly is this is the way it should be. And they're gonna, you know, advocate for that in the instances they can. So anyways, it's not necessarily a knock, but it was something I noticed, and I think it's something worth talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad at the very least that they saved this for the end.
Yeah.
This would have done better as Grimoire Vice's request from the prince, as opposed to Nier's.
Yeah,
but you know, at the very least, we got exposure to the culture before we realized that our character secretly wants to change it. All right, let's move on.
So you go back and you know, return to Yona again, and they end up going to sleep, and they have these really weird dreams. It's actually a shared dream, though.
Yes.
So Nier's like, "Whoa, that was a freaking weird dream. What was that all about?" But he's talking to Yona. He realized that she saw the same figure,
exact dream.
the same place, It's like something weird's going on here.
Yeah.
So you end up going and talking to Popola, and she received a letter from the mayor of a place called Forest of Myth.
The Forest of Myth.
Like a little forest village. And as the mayor was writing this letter, it like gets stranger and stranger.
There's a word that starts to like interject in between.
Yeah.
And eventually the whole letter is just that few words like over and over and over.
And it's like, okay, something weird's going on here. We
Yeah.
need someone to investigate.
Well, it was so weird to see that in letter form.
Yeah.
Because, the joke from Monty Python and the Old Grail was, or in the Holy Grail, if he was dying, he wouldn't have bothered to write on the wall.
I do think
right?
that.
He must have died while carving it.
Oh, come on.
Well, that's what it says.
Look, if he was dying, he wouldn't bother to carve ARG. He'd just say it.
Well, that's what's carved in the rock.
Perhaps he was dictating. Oh, shut up.
And
But this guy is writing
He puts
a
it in the
letter.
envelope and stamps it and puts it in the mail and it gets. Yeah, exactly.
But as we explore the Forest of Myth, we see that that's not the weirdest thing going on
Yeah,
here.
not even
There's
close.
crazy stuff happening here.
So you go visit, and the mayor's kind of sitting there, and you talk to him. And this was one of the things in this game that I felt like could have been viewed as a huge risk
Yeah.
internally.
Oh my gosh, yes.
As like turning a whole section into what they did.
It could have been a huge turnoff, to especially younger players.
Yeah, the Forest of Myth is
Yeah.
essentially a 40-ish to hour long, depending how quickly you
Yeah.
read.
Depending on how you read.
Text adventure.
Yeah, it's pure it's a visual novel of sorts. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I mean,
Visual novel,
it's
wouldn't
a text adventure. It's
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
it's a blank screen with words. That's
Yes.
it. Like the old text adventures for like the 80s computers and things,
Yes,
where it's just
yes.
like you type in an answer and it dictates some stuff,
Yeah.
and then you like type in what to do next. It's kind of like that. So you go, but I love the style of it. And I just really love the whole section in general. At first, even throughout the whole thing, I could kind of see and would be totally understanding of someone who hates this section.
Yes,
It's
I would too.
It's mandatory and it's really long.
And you have to pay attention because they ask you
yes,
questions.
you can't just bust through
Right.
the text because you have to pay attention to the story in
Yeah.
order to get out of it. You'll get a game over if you don't do it right.
Right.
So, but I loved the way it transitioned into a dream state, the way it used text
Yeah.
to accomplish that sort of like
Yeah,
abstract.
and the text slowly moves higher up the screen,
Yes.
and your characters start fading into black until
Yes.
the text is all the way
It's
at the
like-
top, and you're at a black screen.
So you have there's like a text box, right? Like a black transparent
like a lower thirds.
lower thirds text box and like small text for the whole game. And all of a sudden that like bumps up higher.
It goes up to a little over half the
Yeah,
screen.
But like the text is still small, but then the text gets big, and then like it kind of overtakes the whole screen,
And then the background
slowly
turns.
it fades to black. It's just this transition.
you
that-
almost don't notice it.
Yes,
Yeah.
that capture. At first, it was kind of like, oh, this is kind of, but it's just like slowly getting weird, and that's how
Yeah.
dreams are.
Yes.
Dreams feel while you're
You
experiencing.
don't know
them.
where it starts.
Yeah, they
it's just you're
feel
there.
weird. They feel normal while you're dreaming it.
Yes.
But then when it's over, you realize how strange it was.
Yeah.
And that was kind of how they accomplished that like abstract concept with text, and that was so cool.
It was
because
very cool.
It was really creative.
I don't know
they
how
did
I
it.
would have thought about that when I was 16 if I played this game, but
Yeah,
that is cool. That is really cool.
it's really cool. It's
would
really well written
almost-
too. Like
Yeah.
all of
very
these
well
little
written.
stories, because
The localization was so important in this game.
Yeah.
Like more than so many other games, but this part specifically, this had to have been localized so well. Like novel, like a best-selling
Yes.
novel style,
Yes.
like level writing in not the language it was originally written in. So that's like hard to do. Localization is usually not tasked with that intense of a job to do.
Yeah.
But they were here and they did a great job.
they really did. And so, like in each one, again, not all the dreams are the same.
Oh, they're quite different.
In one, you have to pay attention to the story and sort of like remember the details to repeat.
Yeah.
In order to escape the mayor's dream and bring him out of this.
Yes.
Okay, so what's happening is there's like a dream disease.
Sickness, yeah, dream disease.
that,
what
like-
do they call it?
I forget the name of it, but they have like an illness that is making them stay asleep in this dream world.
I can't remember what it's called.
And as you talk to the villagers, you like go into their dreams and
into
you share
their dream.
Yeah, share their dream with them, and you bring them out of it. So it's like what you're tasked to do is like wake them up essentially from their dreams, right?
And in order to do that, you have to go through their dream that they have probably been re-dreaming over and over.
Yes.
And you have to get them out of their dream.
So like
crazy.
The first one is mostly you're tasked with just listening to the mayor's story and making sure that you repeat the correct information when prompted.
Yeah.
So that's more just about paying attention. There's another one that you essentially have to choose to explore it. It's like I turn left and go this way, or I turn north and go this way.
And you have to remember.
That one's the one that's most like a text adventure.
But that is the coolest one.
Yeah.
Like when that happens, it's not fun, but necessarily fun. But the story it's telling is freaking crazy.
Yeah, because the dream is really bizarre and kind of disturbing.
And very disturbing.
And you can get game overs by going the wrong way and interacting with the wrong thing.
Yeah.
And then you have to do it again and make sure that you go the right way to escape. Very much reminiscent of old style text adventures. Again, like we said, some sections of the game are nods to Zelda, some are nods to Resident Evil, some are nods to Diablo. This was a nod to whatever text adventure game Yoko Taro grew up playing.
Whatever
in the 80s.
that was. Yeah.
You know, he's paying homage probably to the games that he likes, you know, that he's played, that he respects or whatever. And so I really, really liked it. And then the last one was...
You're out in like the desert or something, and you're walking towards a city of art, like this art structure thing.
Yeah.
And it ends up, I think, being just a barren, destroyed city 1,000 years later, right? Like New York or something, or Tokyo. Or something.
And you basically have to solve riddles in that one.
Yeah.
Where it's like, oh no, it's not riddles. It's like, well,
one of them
does have riddles.
Had riddles throughout it.
But
the Mayor one had those.
This is more like a logic problem.
Yes, that
like,
was it. That was it.
You know, if two of these statues are liars and one of them always tells the truth, and this is the statement from this one, and this is the statement from this one,
blaming the
this
other.
is the statement. Who's telling the truth?
Yeah.
So it's like you have to think about it like,
that one's fascinating.
Only one of these people can tell the truth. So because this person said this and this person said this, you then had to deduce, well, they can't be telling the truth because, anyways.
They're in conflict, so the other it must be,
So this has to be the true one to pick. So I really liked that one.
Right.
That was really memorable. But anyways, the whole section was fascinating. I just had a great time in it. I was smiling the whole way through.
Each of those stories, so I don't know if this is said explicitly within the game, but the tree, there's a tree in the Forest of Myth that stores memories and that kind of, I don't know, has control over
It's like a supercomputer
stuff. Yes.
Which we'll go back to.
And the memories are written on the leaves, but the tree's losing its leaves. Well, these dreams that these people are having there are several times where the people having the dream, like the mayor, will say, oh, you look familiar. I've talked to you before. Mm-hmm. But, okay, there's this quote right here, which is, it has, and so I'm not going to say too much, but this has direct implications for the game later on. But within the Forest of Myth, here it is. Nope, that's a different one.
By the way, if I'm skipping over sections, you have notes about it, let me know so we can...
Don't worry, I've been looking at them, so we're good. In the Forest of Myth, the mayor says he is not the mayor that we know. So at the very end of the dream, we see the mayor, and we're like, oh, the person we've been looking at the whole time that was all misty and we couldn't tell, oh, it's the mayor. And he goes, I'm not the mayor that you know. I'm like, okay, and then he says, and he met a version of us that was not ourself. He said, I met a version of you, but it was not yourself. And then he just lets that riddle kind of sit. And leaves. The dream about the art structures in the desert that became an abandoned city, or at least it appeared to be, that is likely an actual memory, like an actual thing that happened. The mayor meeting us at a past time is a thing that happened in the past.
Yes.
And then that castle that we were taking people from, where people were being tortured, and it was horrific.
Are we in a Neo meeting the architect situation?
Yes, something like that. That one was crazy. That one was my favorite though. The castle, as weird as it was, I don't know. Everything about that one was crazy.
It was nice.
But it seemed to be at least a hint towards a memory of a thing that actually did or may have happened.
Yeah.
And that's that made this more. I feel like I probably would have even younger, from a younger age, I would have been able to do well at this part. I may not have loved it, but it is relevant to the game. These stories seem completely out of left field, totally unrelated.
And just
but
like
they are,
as dreams tend to be, right?
As dreams tend to be. But you look at the text, and there are hints within the text that this is not entirely unrelated.
Yes.
To what's been happening.
Like I said, we'll probably have to dig into like the fullness of that on another episode.
Yeah, we're not going to go into that now.
Too much to get through, but
it's there.
You replay the game more than once, and so like we'll be returning to talk about this at a future point.
Perfect.
But anyways, you help all these people out. Oh, the one thing I really liked too was that the second dreamer, well, I guess it depends on the order you choose to do it, but
for me, the
you
castle
can't
was
tell because she's wearing like a shawl. You can't
right.
tell if it's a man or woman, but they kind of hide. And this is the
that's
quirkiness
true.
of the way they're written is really nice because it's like,
I love it.
see, because this is only text, you didn't know that I'm actually a woman this whole time.
And they'll even say that in the text.
Yeah, and in the mayor's dream, it's like Vice is responding to the narrator.
Like, I didn't say that.
Yeah, it's like I'm Grimoire Vice, and like I have ultimate power, and like you don't tell me what to say or whatever.
And then they'll do looks. They'll be like a solemn look flashed across the face of the book, or and he's like, no, that's not what happened. It's so funny.
It's fourth wall breaking in a wonderful way,
in a different way,
and it's just kind of the quirkiness of Taro's style that I really really like.
Yeah.
So the whole section's great. And like you said, it may seem like you don't learn much, or that like what was the point of this? Mm-hmm. There is a point to it, and we'll return to it later.
Yes, we will.
But so after this, you head back.
And this is where there's some. This was funny because if you're Papa Nier, this probably lands a little differently than Brother Nier.
Yeah.
But there's some kid that's writing letters to Yona, right?
Yes.
And it's like, who is this kid? And she says, oh, it's my friend. We write letters every now and then. And it's like, if you're the dad, Nier,
like a pen pal.
Yeah, it's like a pen pal. But it's like, oh, what's the motive? What's this guy doing? This might be like a 40-year-old guy. As it turns out, that may not have been too far from the truth. But
it's true, actually.
This isn't who you think it is, and 100% true. So anyways, the person is named Emil or Emil. How would you say this?
I think it's Emil.
It's Emiru in Japanese.
Emil.
Emil, okay.
Is how they say it in English. But it's funny they bring that up because I'm sure this is not the way that the text is going to read what they're going to say in the replicant version. But when Nier walks out the house, he and Vice are kind of going back and forth, and he's like, oh, great, my kid has a boyfriend.
Yes.
And,
now, I can't remember if Replicant Nier says that or not.
I could see it being similar as a like overprotective brother.
Yes, even if he does, it just doesn't land quite the same as a father would. A father would be like, stop writing to that dude right now.
Yeah.
So anyways, there's like some issue, and Emil's sick and needs some help, and do you know anyone who can help? And she's writing back, oh, my brother's great, he can help you. And so she asks us, hey, can you help him? Problem being, we have trouble getting to that place. I think we need to take a boat. Is this one?
No. So it's on the way to Seafront, and you kind of hook around before you get there, and the Manor's just kind of in between the two.
Okay.
But it's got like a big gate, and like you pass through it, and like
it looks very eerie and desaturated.
Everything goes desaturated except the characters. Yeah. The characters are in color, but everything else is in black and white. And I remember thinking I should probably look into if there's any explanation for why that is, and I did not write the note, and so now I'm remembering I didn't do that, so I'll look into it.
Luckily, we're playing it again.
If there was a reason for it going black and white.
Other than it just looks this is the part that is Resident Evil. It looks and feels just like Resident Evil.
And I loved it.
Yes, me too.
I fetching loved it. I loved the fixed cameras.
The fixed camera. So every time you go around a corner, the camera's in a different place. Sometimes it's a wide-angle lens, and it looks really creepy.
Yeah.
There's paintings on the wall, and it's just cobwebs, and it's just
and he runs a little slower.
He's very slow.
And you also can't roll inside of the building. You can't dodge or evade because he's not running his full speed. So there's even like limits on the movement that are, I think, maybe homages to Resident Evil, which had tank controls.
I think so, exactly.
Because in Resident Evil, like moving around is scary just because it's so awkward. And so it's like, oh, he's getting close, fetch, like go around.
And every time you open a door, the screen goes black and you hear it, and then the screen goes, but that's like Resident Evil. I don't know, it's just really really fascinating the way that they did that.
I
loved it.
loved it, and it made me just wish again that modern games, especially RPGs, would try fixed camera angles more often, because I just love the style of it.
They did a good job.
I love the style of it.
Now, there are some shades, right?
There are some shades that you
but not
fight.
as much as you'd think.
Not that many, but they're there, and then you meet a new character, Emil, who is like the master of this manor.
And
basically.
he's like
a little kid.
10.
Well, he appears to be a little kid. Well, it appears to be a young child.
He's and sounds, and he seems very, very young.
And blindfolded. Okay, what's going on here? This is weird. And you come to find out Emil doesn't know anything about writing letters.
These letters,
To Yona.
But he has a butler.
Yes.
Weird stuff going on with the butler too, but I don't know that we really figure everything out with him.
So the reason he's blindfolded is because he has a curse, where if he looks at you with his eyes like a Medusa type, you turn to stone, you petrify.
Yeah, completely.
And I believe the reason why the butler is he's very slow. It's like he's half petrified almost, right? Like, so it's like Emil might have glanced at him sidelong or something, and so he can't really fight, and he can't move very well, and he's kind of heavy in the limbs.
Of that. Yeah,
and I think it's because he probably got like partially petrified.
Something happened, where a mirror or like some
maybe a mirror
side effect. Yeah. So every now and then we'll go into a room and he's there.
Yeah.
And I think one of the characters responds. I don't know who it would be, but it's like, is this a person or a statue? Like,
yes.
This looks so creepy. My thinking would be that my initial thought after completing the game was that he was some sort of android-ish type character.
That's actually a possibility.
Yeah, but I don't know that it says one way or another.
Yeah.
I like your theory on that. I think
that was the thought that I had, because he was talking about he has a hard time moving.
He's a good man at heart, but a bit inflexible. Almost like a statue.
He has a hard time, like, he doesn't have mobility. Mm-hmm. And so my thought was like, he must have been partially or half petrified somehow, because he lives with a kid who can petrify. I mean, there's a lot of statues.
There are statues all around that
of
courtyard.
Children and women and other people and stuff.
Yep.
And it's like, well, obviously that's what happened to them.
Yes, clearly.
So,
poor
anyways.
Emil is Emil. I like that.
Yeah.
Emil. He is, I think he is my favorite character in the entire game.
Really?
Yeah.
Really? Okay.
I absolutely love that character.
That's awesome.
He's wonderful.
So why is that?
Well, it's for some stuff that we'll talk about later, but he is he's honest, and he's like, you know how, I think the part that endeared me to him the most was when he and Kaine have to sleep outside, and he talks about how it was like they were in a tent, and he was like, it was like a camp out.
Yeah.
You know? He's such a young, spirited kid in a horrible situation, but he is so like positive.
Yeah.
He is so. I love his character. I love the way everything he does, and the way he thinks, and the way he is and acts and everything. In his history, I love his character. He's my absolute favorite.
That's awesome.
And it like borderline brings a tear to my eye with his character as things progress throughout the story, because it's like, this is like such a good kid. He doesn't deserve this crap.
Okay,
you know?
The fact that you have said that is really good, because there's something I would love to get your perspective on when we get to the end of the summary.
Good.
Because it landed differently for me, but I want to see your perspectives. I have a very good feeling now it'll be different than mine.
Okay.
So it'll be a good discussion.
Cool.
But anyways, the idea while you're there is to go into the library of this manor, because there should be something written there that could hopefully the butler could work on to cure him of his curse.
Yeah.
But the butler can't fight the shade that's in there.
Yeah.
And so it's like, if you can go in there and help us out with that, that was what I was really writing the letters for, was to try to get, because he'd heard rumors of this warrior from
type,
the village
who just kills every shade he sees.
Who's like really powerful.
Yeah.
So it's like he was baiting him into coming there by writing to Yona, right?
So it was actually an older man with ulterior motives who wrote to Yona.
But the ulterior motives were to save Emil.
Exactly.
So, anyways, we agreed to do it. And of course, Vice is always like, why are we agreeing to help other people all the time? He's like grumbling about it. Like, you're too, soft, people take advantage of you.
Yes,
Which is absolutely true, because I did every
true.
damn side quest of part one.
There are some. There's some where the people literally scam you and skip town, and it's like what? What a horrible waste of time.
I'll talk about that in a minute because it was actually really important to how I interpreted something that happens in part two, which we're almost up to now.
Okay.
But you go down there, you fight the Shade. It's a book, and you fight it, and you get the
grimoire.
page.
It starts with an R. It's like a red.
Yeah.
It's like Grimoire Vice.
It's a different grimoire.
Grimoire Ruby something or other. Yeah.
Anyways, you fight it, you get the page he's looking for, the butler's like, all right, I'm going to work on this curse, and thank you very much. Now, when they're leaving, Kaine and Emil have a great scene together, where, I mean, there were things that you could have picked up on, right? And I don't know if it was stated outright before this, but this is at least the first time it's stated outright, that Kaine is possessed by a shade.
Yeah.
This is why she wears bands.
She always holds her left arm
on her arm and leg, because that's actually a shade arm and leg if you were to like unwrap that, right? And so she's possessed by a shade, and she's talking to him about your eyes are not a curse, like they're part of who you are, and like you should accept that. And she has reasons for feeling this way about parts of her body too, which we don't know about yet, and we won't know about till the second playthrough. But they connect on that in that way. Yeah. And there's a really, really nice little beautiful piece of dialogue they share back and forth, and she whispers something to him that we're not privy to on this playthrough. And then you're leaving, and Vice, sticks or pokes her ribs a little bit.
As he always does.
And she's like, shut up, and even Nier's like, okay, you're going too far, like stop.
Yeah.
And then, anyways, but that scene, I felt was really, really well done. But then you head back to the village, and this is where things get freaking nuts.
Yeah, this is crazy.
The town gets attacked by a huge shade.
Emil can kind of like feel it. Like he's blind, but he's very sensitive in other ways. And he can feel, he's like, the shades are coming. Like he says that well before anything happens. And
because he runs back to the village to warn you this is coming.
Yeah.
And enters in as like, oh, get ready. So that boss fight is awesome.
It's crazy.
There's many parts to it.
It's crazy, yeah. At first, you're like at the gate, and he's just wrecking the whole city.
And then, he's making his way to the library, trying to stop him before he gets there. Kaine shows up to help you at the end, and you're both fighting together. It's super epic and cool. And then you think you beat it, and then like the head ends up getting into the library itself, and you're fighting it, and it's like, all right, we're gonna lock it in this basement.
In the door, but then Kaine's, that's her job for the last portion of the fight, is to just hold the door. And
closed.
That's it. She's not actually helping.
Because at that moment, the Shadowlord appears with Grimoire Noir.
And he is holding Yona.
Yeah, he came to abduct Yona.
Sacrificial, she is prostrate, she is just horizontal, and he is just holding her.
Yeah.
Right?
And so it's like, holy crap,
what?
Who is the Shadowlord?
But before that, this is important.
Okay.
Before that, we say Devila and Popola. We say, I think it was Devila, we say, go protect Yona.
Yes.
Go to the place and protect Yona. She's over at the market or whatever. And I'm going to go fight the Shade. You go protect Yona. Okay, anyways, that's just important.
Yes, it's important that they were supposed to be taking care of her. And then
Shadowlord shows up with Yona. It's like, man, how did that happen? And why is Shadowlord so interested in Yona? Specifically her. What the heck? You're just trying to save your sister from this thing that everyone gets at some point and is just this awful disease, and you're trying to help her out. And this dude just grabs your sister, like you're, as far as you know, an unimportant figure in the grand scheme of the world. But that the lead, they refer to him as like the head Shade. Like he's the leader of the Shade. In fact, as he shows up with Yona and Grimoire Noir, the other Shades around him kind of kneel down and they bow to him. He is in complete control.
The ruler or the leader of the Shades, right?
And he is interesting. He just has no facial expression. He does not emote at all.
He doesn't say anything.
He doesn't say a word.
And now I like that for two reasons. Obviously, one, they're hiding a big reveal for later.
Yes, and we don't. It's not time for that.
There's like a subtlety to the fact that he has no need to speak to you. It's like Noir speaks for me. Like I'm so above you. I'm not even going to come down to your level to speak to you, kind of a thing.
And he flies and stuff. Yeah. And
he's like very powerful.
Very powerful.
And I really liked that, not just for the fact that they're hiding a reveal, but for the fact that it felt, a lot of main villains, they're going to sit there and monologue for 3 hours.
Yes, and they'll explain their motives, and
And it's like, why would you do that? Just, you're there for a reason. come there and get out, and So I liked that he doesn't speak at all there, the Shadowlord.
Yeah, me too.
But Noir speaks a lot, and this is where it's revealed that Vice and Noir are supposed to, like the actual prophecy that we talked about last time, the Song of the Ancients.
From the song,
they're supposed to combine with each other, right? It's not that the white is supposed to destroy the black, which is the way it's been interpreted.
Yeah.
It's that they're supposed to actually combine into one again, and that like restores Vice's memories, and that their actual purpose is something different than what the song suggested. And since we got all the way through ending A, I'm trying to decide which parts of this are spoilers or not. But essentially, well, we'll wait till the end of the summary at least to get to that part of it. But Vice is kind of like, he doesn't know what to do. He's confused by this. He's maybe entranced a bit.
Because he does feel there is some truth to what Grimoire Noir is speaking to him. And he has, it's almost like a distant memory that he's here. It's reminding him of something in his past that he's forgotten. And Grimoire Noir is telling him these things, and he's just like, it's like a dream almost. The background goes white, and it's just echoey, and he's just like in his own head of like, what? And Grimoire Noir is like, yeah, we're supposed to do this, and like this is how it's supposed to be. And Vice is like, he just can't believe it. He's like about to like pass out. Like he's just racking his mind, right?
And that's when
Kaine, with her wonderful monologue
from the title screen, comes in to snap him out of it.
Yeah,
and
she is very good at it.
She does so. She snaps him out of it, and he's like, no one's ever called me names like this before.
Because he gets mad if you even don't say Grimoire Vice.
If you don't say his full name.
Vice, which in the Japanese, when Yona talks to Grimoire Vice, she calls him Shiro-chan. So Shiro meaning white, right? And everyone just calls him, hey, Shiro. And Shiro just means white, and he doesn't like that because it's like white. But she says Shiro-chan, which is like a cutesy way. like a very familiar. Yes, if you're intimate, or you would call like a baby chan, And
they put that as Vicey, so with a Y.
Vicey, okay, English, that's how they.
That's kind of what you do with baby names. You put a little Y on the end, right?
And he'll tolerate it because he likes Yona, but he hates it. But he's never been like talked to like this before.
Yeah.
This is like way over the line.
And so you fight Grimoire Noir. It's one of those where you win in the game, lose in the cutscene deals.
Yes, yeah.
But whatever. We're not strong enough to beat him. And I think that like your powers even get taken from you for part of that. It's like, I think that's what happens. So it's like Grimoire Vice's powers get sucked out.
Yeah,
you have to
his
like
powers.
recover them, and as you recover them, you're using them again to win. And anyways, the ultimate point is the Shadowlord gets away with Yona. We don't know where he goes.
Stabs you in the freaking chest.
And yes, and that happens.
Horrifically.
So he's wounded badly.
Yeah.
And Grimoire Noir gets away, and this monster's about to emerge. Kaine can't keep the door shut. And at that point, it's like, well, they're probably not going to beat it because Nier is mortally wounded. So she ends up asking Emil to petrify her in order to create a barrier that the monster can't get out of, to seal the monster in the basement.
Yeah.
And of course, there's a lot of back and forth there. No, I can't do that. I can't possibly do that. No, Kaine, don't make me do it. Mm-hmm. And she eventually convinces him, and so it's a sacrificial thing on her part. And so he does it. He takes off his blindfold. You see his eyes for the first time.
Yeah.
And
it's good-looking
petrifies her. Yeah. And then there's that kind of whole section comes to an end. It's kind of almost a belly of the whale type situation in terms of where we are at in the story. It's like the lowest point.
It's the bottom. Yeah. Right? Your daughter or your sister is gone. Everything's, the village just got like
Kaine
wrecked.
Is dead now.
Kaine's gone. Yeah, although at the very end, Grimoire Vice, everyone's saying their goodbyes to Kaine.
Yeah.
And Kaine's like, well, I guess it's your turn, right? And he's like, I'm not saying bye to you. And his reasoning is, like, I suspect that it'll take more than being turned to stone to do with you.
Yeah, to actually kill you.
Yeah.
And she's like, well, I doubt it.
Like,
but.
Yeah. Well, in the Japanese, she says, soka, which means, like, I wonder. And then that's one of the differences.
Interesting.
Yeah, so what she's really saying is, anyways. You can translate it as I doubt. I'm not saying the translators got it wrong. I'm just saying there's a nuance that's different in the way that they have her character in the Japanese and English, and that's one of them. But Soulkad in general means like you could be right, you could be wrong, or I wonder kind of thing. It doesn't necessarily mean that she doubts it, but at least she's questioning it more or less.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's a little softer. It softens her character more in the Japanese than in the English, where she's a lot harder.
Yeah. So we also get the reveal here that essentially the Shadowlord set this all in motion. So like the journey to collect the sealed verses, all of that was the Shadowlord like leading us on, prompted us. Like we weren't gathering it because, the original idea, Nier's original idea was, we have to gather all the sealed verses so we can gather all of Vice's power, and then he can destroy the Black Book, which will destroy the Black Scroll.
Yeah.
But what's really happening is that Vice is going to be restored to a point where he and Noir can combine again. So the Shadowlord...
And it seems like to accomplish Noir's purpose.
Yes, or the Shadowlord's purpose.
Or the Shadowlord's, not so much Grimoire Vice's purpose, because he doesn't even know.
Yes.
He doesn't know why.
So it's like, this is exactly what the villain wanted you to do. Everything you did was in pursuit of the Shadowlord's goal.
Right into my trap.
Exactly. So anyways, that's kind of belly of the whale situation. And... skipping down here.
So
to the 5-year time skip.
Yeah, it's a time skip now. And when we come back from the time skip, it's funny because you're out in the northern lands, and you're just fighting shades, doing your normal thing,
looking for Yona for 5 years,
basically,
trying to find clues.
Still with Grimoire Vice, you're still like there. You're still doing the same thing. Basically, you've just been working and fighting for 5 years straight.
So here's the part again where I give the tip of the hat to the replicant version.
Yeah.
You get a much cooler, older version of the character.
Yeah, and the voice change.
Is
he's
gruffer.
Is different. Yeah.
He's like cooler looking now.
This is where the Japanese, it becomes more in conflict with English, is with this new version of Nier, who's a lot gruffer.
He's an adult
Yeah.
versus a kid or a teenager.
Yeah, he looks quite different.
He's very singularly focused on a goal now. He's not...
Yeah.
He has his perspective has changed in this desperation to not accept a loss, right?
Yes.
Like to regain what was taken from him.
Yeah.
It's changed him as a person in a lot of ways.
There's something that I suppose I should bring it up later.
Okay.
But this deals with the cyclical stuff too. Hopefully I'll remember it.
So in the Gestalt version,
he's already older. It's no different.
He wears like a leather diaper on his face now. Like it's a really dumb mask.
Right, yeah.
And it looks really stupid. And I have no idea why that was the time skip version of the character. It's like they want to make him look different now, but that thing he wears makes no sense. It's like covering up his eye for no reason. And it's just this like really weird scrap of leather wrapped around his head that it just looks dumb. I'm sorry. Like the 5-year
this
time
is much
skip,
better.
The 5-year time skip for the kid Nier is way cooler than the 5-year time skip for the Pop and Nier character. Anyways, the shades are more evolved now. They wear armor and stuff, and so they've gotten harder to fight. You have to use a lot more magic against them, but some of them have like magic shields that can deflect magic, and so it's like the whole world is a lot more bleak. They keep the gates shut like all the time now in the village.
Yes, yeah.
Everyone's more on edge.
Yep.
It's looking bleaker and bleaker all the time. There's like a couple of changes in the village. Like I don't know if you saw these NPCs, but you know that place where you can kind of run up the stairs onto like the bridge that leads, like the stone bridge that leads around to where you can go get in the boat.
Yes, yeah.
If you go left there instead of right and going down the bridge, and you go up the hill a little bit, there's like a pair of lovers up there who talk to each other. And you go up there now, and she's alone, and her boyfriend or husband has died. Yeah. Like everything is just a lot worse now, and you kind of feel the heaviness of it.
Yeah.
And I mean that's reflected in the character and his new kind of personality that's turned a little darker. Everything's just a lot more bleak, right?
Well, and every now and then when we do talk to Popola, as we kind of start to, start things up again with the game, and there's new things that we've found that we're starting to look for.
Yeah.
She'll ask us like, "Hey, are you sure that Yona's still alive?" Like she doesn't say those exact words, but she hints like, "Are you positive?" And he's like, "Shut up, don't say that." Like she's alive, I can feel it. Don't bring it up again.
Yeah.
But whereas before it's like, "Oh, we got to save Yona. She's back at home." Now it's like we got to save her. I don't know where she is, and she might not even be alive. Right.
Another thing, at least in the English version, is he takes note of how Popola has not aged at all.
Yes. Yeah.
He's like, you look exactly the same as the day I met you.
Yeah.
However long ago that was for him, it's like you still look great, and it's like I'm getting super old. Papa Nier version, he's in his 40s now. So he's like I'm getting older, and you still look good. So another kind of hint dropped about exactly what's going on with Devla and Popola.
Yeah.
But anyways, you end up going from there. There's a letter from Emil who has gotten a lead on how to unpetrify Kaine.
Yeah.
And so it's like, come to the manor. Let's talk about this because I think I know how we can save her. So you go back there, and there's a second level inside of the manor.
Yeah, it's like
underneath. It's like a secret lab area. So the manor was created. It feels very FF7 like with the Shinra mansion.
Yeah, and the camera angle. Being well, it's not fixed, but it kind of follows
isometric.
You. But yeah, it's isometric, and it's a 3/4, and it's just there. You can't like move it around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they built the mansion as a front to hide the laboratory that's underneath, right?
Yeah.
And the Shinra Manor is the same way. It's like
it's
like a mansion, but underneath they're doing all their experiments.
Yeah.
Right. So, anyways, you go down there, but it kind of feels more like Diablo-like gameplay-wise, where you got this high 3/4 isometric view. You can still rotate the camera around if you want to, but it's got that feel to it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
More maybe like a Western RPG type of like camera feel to it. So anyways, you go through that whole laboratory, you're learning clues, it's suggesting.
Emil's starting to act different the further in we go.
Yeah.
He's starting to, I want to say...
awaken a bit.
Yeah, remember things and starting to figure out a little bit about how he became like Medusa.
Yeah. And for us, like the player playing the game, it's like, oh, this technology is reflective of our time, more or less. So this was the ancient civilization of Nier's world, 1,500 years ago or whatever it is. That was kind of our modern day.
Yeah.
And this lab is like a relic from that time. So you're making your way down there, and you learn that Emil and his twin sister were experiments.
Yeah, they were subjects.
These attempts to infuse magic into kids to turn them into weapons. And because, again, magic was introduced into our universe via the E ending of Drakengard when the dragon and the giant showed up.
Yeah.
So that's where the white chlorination comes from.
But then the scientists discover magic. Yeah.
Yes, and so they're trying to figure it out, right? And it's like that's where everything goes wrong, and where the whole civilization collapses, and where people go extinct. But not exactly extinct, and we'll talk about why that is.
What happened to all the people?
But anyways, there's remnants of that, of these scientists experimenting on kids with this new magical element that came into the world via Drakengard's portal. That went wrong. And what you find is that his sister is the boss of this area, freaky looking skeleton monster looking thing.
Very freaky, yeah.
And basically says, my sister is like the greatest weapon that's ever been created, and they couldn't control it. So
they like chained it to this, place. It was like imprisoned in this chamber.
Yeah. And so anyways, it escapes, and he's like, listen, if my sister manages to consume me, kill my sister, basically, or kill me, or I can't remember exactly what he said, but he's like, but he's like, but as soon as he says that, he gets fetching swallowed by the monster.
And you know what's going to happen. But he's trying to like save his sister in the best he can.
Yeah. And so you fight.
He can't.
The monster. It's actually not a very hard boss fight for all of the talking about how powerful it is. It's like, this is actually one of the easier bosses in the game. At least it was for me.
Yeah.
But anyways, you beat it. And it's revealed Emil has changed. He's undergone a physiological change.
Yeah.
He's been transformed into something different. And the whole point of this was, again, to find out how to save Kaine, how to control his petrification magic a little better. And he gains that and a lot more in that, like, he has access to very powerful magic. He's like a way more powerful mage now.
Yeah.
But the consequence is he's been transformed into a skeleton man with a giant, with the Yoko Taro mask.
The helmet, the mask on his face.
The big circular, smiling, creepy skeleton mask that Yoko Taro wears in his interviews and things. That's where that mask comes from. And it's like a huge breakdown. I mean, imagine, that happening to you. It's like being transformed into a monster.
Yep.
And
he's pretty unhappy. In fact, he's surprised. He's legitimately surprised that we still accept him or want to be around him at all, because he feels like he's just so hideous. But he can see now, and he can see everybody. And he's like, what he says to Nier is, "You look just like I thought you'd look. Super cool."
Which works for the brother Nier character who does look cool now. It's kind of weird because again, it's almost like, I think there's kind of two ways you can interpret it, and I think they're both correct.
Yeah.
I do think that there is some subtext, and we'll probably get into more of this next time, that Emil is a gay character, right? He likes men. And so he has this attachment to the main character, an affection for the main character. I think that there's an undertone of that there, but there's also just an admiration for the strength, because Emil's a very weak character.
Yeah.
So he looks at him for the first time, and it's like, you look just like I imagined. You look so cool. And then it pans up to diaper face wearing old man, ugliest fetching main character ever Nier. It's like, that's not it. That's not how this was supposed to go. He was supposed to look like a freaking like beast, like in the Replicant version.
Right.
Another area where it's like, I can see that the intention was probably the younger male Nier character, not the older character, but he just looks so jacked in that scene in the Gestalt version. But anyways, it's a nice moment though.
Yeah, it is.
Because...
And it only takes him a minute, and he's like, at first I didn't like this, but it's not so bad.
Yeah.
Right? And it's just like so quick. That's what I love about Emil. He is a very, I don't know, he's an awful situation, and he kind of, makes the most out of it, or makes the best out of it, as best as he can.
Yeah.
And so, like, that's a pretty crazy, tragic thing to happen. But that's how he responds. We learn a lot about like the way, like the experiments that they did and stuff. And Emil specifically, he's been around for a long time.
Long time.
A very long time.
It's unknown how long, but thousands of years old.
Yeah, likely since the beginning. He is, he's just, this is how he's been. And in part, I think this was partially true of his sister as well, that like there was some type of immortality system thing where they couldn't undo what they had done with the magic.
Right.
But the life that they had was not a great life, but it was hard for them to exit life, basically. It's like basically impossible. So we learned that about him.
But he's like, I know how to use magic to free Kaine now.
He can control it. Yeah.
They go back and they release Kaine, and this was one of my favorite scenes in the game, where she comes out of the petrification, and like, how long has it been? Oh, it's been 5 years. It's like, wow. I mean, just a very genuine shock of that's a really long time.
Yeah.
Like, wow. And I love how they're all saying, it's so great to see you again. And main character is like, I think especially it's great to like see you again. And her response is, you look like shit.
That's right. And I can't remember the Japanese there, but it probably wasn't as harsh.
She's so great. I freaking love her so much. She's such a great character.
She's good.
But and I especially love it because of what happens right after that. She kind of like locks eyes with Nier, and there is, especially for the time and the budget of this game, an expression on her face, right? I talk about how one of the things I value most in good storytelling is the ability to say a lot without saying anything, which is
Oh,
why I
yes.
like that the Shadowlord
Yes.
didn't talk.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I like that she doesn't say anything. She looks at him and I can see it in her eyes and face. She is so shocked that anyone cared after 5 years to try to save her. She could not, she doesn't know how to handle that.
Right. Because she doesn't value herself that way.
Came back and like we're still thinking about helping me. 5 years later, you still care. I can't believe that. What? And like that's what I get, but it's only from a look.
Wow.
And it's the first time that she
That's
looks at him, and I can see a romantic undertone there. Like she's appreciative and so shocked about how they care about her, but she definitely feels something for him too. And that gets a little more evident like later in the Shadowlord's castle.
Yes,
But
I remember that.
but it's just such a great moment because I like even in the PS3 version, I mean, I haven't played the Replicant version up to that point yet, obviously, but even for those very basic kind of facial rigging that they have in that, they were somehow able to express that total disbelief that anyone could love her.
Right.
Really, right? In her face, and she does not know how to respond to that. She's definitely not going to know how to say anything to respond to that. So she's just totally stunned in silence. Had no idea what to do, but obviously
Nice touch.
feels so grateful that for the first time, aside from her grandmother, there's a person or multiple people, her comrades who are definitely friends now.
Yes. At least by this point.
Actually cared that much, and we're still thinking about her all those years later. It was just a really nice moment.
On top of that, we bring him a flower necklace similar to what her grandmother had made her with the lunar tears. And I think Nier says, this isn't as good as your grandma's, but here you go. And her response is like, well, once again, she's just like, "This, I can't believe you did this." But she, instead of responding like, "Yeah, this thing sucks," or "Yeah, you shouldn't have done that," or whatever she would have likely have said before, she's very appreciative. She's like, "Oh, this is great, thank you."
Like the first time where she's not just going to say some profanity-laden kind of two-handed comment.
Yeah.
But if she can't say anything that's just strictly nice. So she just can't say anything.
She just can't. She doesn't know what to say.
She doesn't know what to do.
And this is an awesome part too. She recognizes Emil just immediately.
Yes.
So and
she doesn't even
she didn't even mention it.
Doubt
that he looks different. Yeah. She's like, Emil, thanks for coming and thanks for doing this. And he's like, wait, you knew that it was me? And she's like, who else? Of course I know it's you.
Yeah. Like she just accepts him immediately too. This dynamic between the main cast.
Yeah.
This ability to accept each other despite each of their really messed up pasts, whether it be physical appearance or being just kind of an outcast and harsh personality and someone who's difficult maybe to deal with sometimes. Vice being this very condescending person. It's like they're all in their own way really messed up people.
Yeah.
Nier is becoming much and more over the time just like obsessive about I will not accept the loss. I will do anything it takes to get what I want. I will sacrifice whatever. Like there's kind of a darker path. So they're a group of misfits and really messed up people that are able to find this deep level of companionship that is super convincing and natural, and it's just great. And it just really works.
Yep. So because we freed Kaine, that monster, apparently it's still been there for 5 years too, and just been chilling. So he comes out, we're able to kill him pretty
It's a really easy boss fight again, but I think this is intentional. I think it's meant to show how much stronger Nier has gotten over that 5 year period. I don't know that for a fact, but I assume it because it's like the mechanics of the boss fight are more or less the same, but it's just way easier to kill this time.
It's just easier.
So we're just stronger now.
And it's so funny because right as soon as we kill it, it's gone. We're like, sick. All right, let's go off on our adventures. Popula shows up and she's like, hey, can I see you in my office for a minute?
Yeah.
We're like, that's kind of weird. Like, yeah, you're welcome. Okay, sure. So we walk up and the first thing she says is like, Kaine and Emil are not allowed in our village.
I was so pissed.
Oh my gosh.
I was so pissed, dude. I was furious by this. And again, I wasn't furious necessarily at Devla and Popula. Because obviously they were pressured by the villagers.
Yes, yeah.
I was pissed at the villagers.
Right.
Because I had done every single one of their petty side quests.
All of their side quests.
I did all the stupid BS that they asked me to do. I went way out of my way to help them.
Gosh.
And they won't even take my word as one of them who has gone over the moon to help their community. They will not even take my word or recommendation that these people are okay.
Right.
They're like, nope, they can't stay here. And that's when I decided I'm not doing another side quest the rest of this game. I'm done with side quests now. That's how powerfully angry I was at them for that. Now, on the second playthrough, I will do the side quests in Act 2. Because I did all the side quests in Act 1. There's a bunch of them in Act 2. I didn't fulfill I might have fulfilled one. But I didn't do any of them because I was just so mad at the villagers for this. And I was like, nope, I'm on their team. I'm not on your team. And this all works into the theme that we've been talking about. I felt the tribalistic tendency.
But it's what Yoko Taro wanted you to feel. It's what he wanted you to feel.
Yes.
And he was able to elicit that.
Even when I knew
that that's
all
what his
along
intent was.
that this is what the game's about, I was still so angry and so unwilling to understand their point of view that I was like, nope, I'm done. I'm no longer a part of your team. I'm going to go out with them. That's what I would have done in real life.
Yes.
And it's like, that's a failing of mine, maybe my mentality. And, Nier's initial response is very angry as well, but he kind of starts to soften on it.
He comes back and apologizes. He says, sorry I got mad at you, Popola. It wasn't your decision. You're just doing the best for the village.
Yeah.
And she's like, no, I'd be mad too. Like she's playing up. Well, not playing. What's the word? She's
capitulating. Maybe that's
I don't know what the word is, but she's more empathetic than she was initially. She's putting on more empathy.
Yes.
In the conversation than she was earlier on. And she wasn't like rude about it. She was like, this is for the villagers. We're just trying to help. I think Devila was there too. And she was like, yeah, this is why we're doing this.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was frustrating. But Emil, of course, is just like, oh, it's no problem. We'll sleep outside. It's fine. And Kaine's like, I've been sleeping outside my whole life. And then Nier gets mad at himself because it's not just that the villagers don't like her. It's that he didn't realize that she had been sleeping outside this whole time. He didn't take any thought as to what she was doing with her life this whole time in between when she was with him, right?
Yeah.
And now he's so upset. He's just like, of course she just sleeps outside. Of course she's been sleeping outside for years, for almost her whole life. And I didn't think anything of it, right? And so a lot of the anger he feels towards Popola is kind of himself. He's really upset with himself that she has to live the way that she already was living back when he knew her, but he didn't even know. Kind of as a failure as a leader, I guess, of sorts, or as a friend.
A nice introspective moment.
Yeah.
For the character, and
But of course, Emil's happy, and as we meet with them later, I mentioned this earlier, but Emil treats it like a camp out, like a sleepover with a friend, and he talks the way it's so funny the way he talks about Kaine. He's just like, we chill by the campfire and we just kind of talk. And, Kaine is actually really interesting. She's a lot more sensitive than you think. Kaine is like, hold up, buddy. I've got an image to keep up here. Don't say
Stop talking.
But I love it. Like, their relationship is, really genuine.
Yeah,
it's really
good.
It's really cool.
So, we move forward by saying we need to find a way to get to the Shadowlord, right?
Oh yeah, but when we were in the basement of Emil's mansion, didn't we find? I think that's where we found a thing.
No,
is it later?
It's later because
then it's later.
They say there's got to be something at the Lost Shrine that can give us a hint as to where the Shadowlord's castle is, where we can find him.
Yeah,
and it's when you go back through the Lost Shrine to the top that you find the first piece of a key.
Okay, that
unlocks the Shadowlord's castle.
Yeah.
But there's several other pieces. You go back and you speak with Popola about it, and she's like, "Okay, we have these hints.
They each mean different things. There's Cerberus.
So there's like
sacrifice,
the law of robotics, the memory tree, and so those are really obvious. It's like, okay, I got to go back to the Forest of Myth, and I got to go back to the Junkheap.
Yeah, the Junkheap.
For that,
but
there are
Cerberus
others that aren't
less
as obvious.
And then sacrifice, which is pretty general. So
it's like, I don't know about those. Give me more time to think about it. In the meantime, you can go to the Junkheap or to the Forest of Myth.
Or to the Forest. So it's one of those things.
You can choose where to go first. I went to the Junkheap first.
I don't remember this.
And this is the only place in the game where I felt the pacing wasn't quite as great.
Yeah.
Because there are certain sections that are phenomenal in this quest to go get all the pieces.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, it's pretty obvious as a player of video games, and especially RPGs and Zelda games, we're going to revisit all of the same areas again.
It's been 5 years later.
I'm going to go back to Facade.
Back.
I'm going to go back to the Aerie. I'm going to go back to Force of Myth and Junkheap and everything. I'm going to revisit those areas a second time. And there's a part of that that certainly felt tedious. You have to go through the Lost Shrine like 3 times in the game. You have to go through the Junkheap twice.
Yes.
Actually 3 times, because you have to go through it, and then you come out and you get the thing that. Okay, so let's just start from the beginning. You go there, and Gideon, the little boy who had the weird animation, and was like,
he's like swimming. He's grown up.
The only
now.
one there. He's grown up, and his brother died 4 years ago.
And
that
we were
death
able to kind
scene
of see that.
Was intense.
That was crazy.
Because his brother got crushed by falling debris, and he tries to pull him out, and you don't see it.
You don't see
but
it.
You hear it. He pulls his body, and it's clearly separated.
His arm out or something like that.
I got the sense
I thought he pulled his arm
that
off,
his torso was cut.
Okay, well,
like his whole torso came off.
I mean, that's
and his
face
as
well.
I mean, either one would be absolutely horrifying. But that kid saw some messed up stuff.
And it was partly his fault. He was somewhere where he wasn't supposed to be when a robot came, and his brother, I think, saved him.
Yes.
And that's how he died.
Yes. And so he's been psychologically damaged.
Yeah, that sucks.
Lost his mother, lost his brother. He's alone now. He hates robots, wants revenge on robots.
Yeah.
Right? And so we go in there because he's going to make a weapon. The first time you go through, it's to collect
the stuff.
The materials necessary for him to build this weapon, which I never even freaking used. Because it's a heavy two-handed sword that I don't like for the combat. I like the lighter one-handed swords. So, and I already had a really powerful one that I'd upgraded quite a bit, so it's like, I don't want this weapon. But you have to go through Junkheap and collect all that, go up the elevator and come out and give him the stuff, and then he's like, well, it's going to take me a while to make this, so I'll write you a letter when it's ready. And so you have to leave there, and you have a choice again. Should I go here or what next? But then you go back, and you have to go through the whole freaking level again and fight a boss this time. And that's when Gideon comes through, and he's just freaking losing it. He's beating on this robot like,
It was like a robot and a shade. It was like a
shade possessing a robot.
Yeah, that was interesting.
And so, like, anyways, he asked you once he had completed the weapon, will you take revenge on this particular robot for me, which is a shade-possessed robot. That is the boss of the area. Anyways, that section, the Junkheap section, is really long because you have to do it twice, and you already did it in the first act of the game. So like 3 times you have to go to the Lost Shrine.
It's very linear, and it's the same.
It's the same level.
Things, a lot of people ride the rails. A
lot of people criticize a game that's coming out soon, the HD remaster of Zelda Skyward Sword.
Oh yeah.
For it having it backtracking and going through the same areas a lot of times.
Stuff. Yeah, the linear.
I didn't see it quite that way because at least in Skyward Sword, you don't do the same dungeon again. It's like there's a shortcut through that part, and there's another dungeon on the back of it. It's the same area.
The scenery is the same.
It's the same type of area. If it's a fire area or a forest area or a water or a desert, but like you unlock another dungeon on the back of the last one, so you don't have to go through the same area twice.
Yeah, not necessarily. No.
Right. Here, you have to go through the same area multiple times, more or less fighting the same things, doing the same things over and over. And so I got really tired of this Junkheap level. It's my least favorite level in the game. And it was really long. Whereas, anyways, they lay it on a little thick with Gideon when he's kind of losing it and he's beating on the dead robot a little bit. And it's one of the places in the game where I felt like, usually there's a good use of subtext, there's a good use of subtlety to how the theme of the game is being sort of worked into the dialogue or worked into it. And here it just kind of felt really on the nose a little bit about how possessed by revenge Gideon is and the character's rejection of that, and just stating outright like, revenge is a fool's errand, Vice says. But it's like, how out of touch, do you have to be to say that when you helped Kaine get revenge on that monster from Act 1? And at this point, I had gone through Facade. So after the first part of the Junkheap, I went and did the Facade mission, and then I came back to the Junkheap again after getting the letter.
Yeah.
But at that point, I had helped the King of Facade get revenge, which we'll talk about in a minute. It's like, this whole game is a fetching pursuit of revenge.
It is.
But we're going to sit here and condemn Gideon for getting revenge. It didn't work for me. I didn't really love the way that this whole Junkheap section worked out.
Yeah, it was my least favorite part.
It was my least favorite part of the game.
Yeah, me too.
Not a fan of it. And I just wasn't a fan of Gideon. It was hard to like that kid for me for some reason.
From the first moment we saw him.
He's annoying. He was
kind
of a grating personality that I didn't really feel a lot of sympathy for, despite the horrific things he'd seen.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. That section didn't really work for me. But the Facade section
is this Forest of Myth again, or is this Facade?
So I went to Facade next.
Okay.
And it was phenomenal.
Very good. Did you see it coming?
I mean, yes.
Were you aware ahead of time?
Yes.
I accidentally was too. I was actually not happy that I was aware ahead of time because it would have landed differently, I think.
But it was really well executed.
I think
that section is really short.
Very
in
short.
comparison to the Junkheap section.
Yes.
And it's like, I wanted way more of this than that.
Yep.
Like, why couldn't I go through Facade a couple of times instead of this stupid Junkheap level?
So with Facade, the prince is getting married, and he's very excited. And we get the weirdest letter that's just full of formalities. It doesn't actually tell you what happened. Yeah, in accordance with this. So then he writes a PS section. Hey, I'm getting married. Come to my wedding. Like the end. And so you didn't get that from the letter, but you got it in the postscript, right?
Yeah.
So Emil is stoked. He's so excited. He's like, I've never been to a wedding before. Like, this is going to be so fun. So you go to Facade. This is another thing. This is one of the parts where I was like, man, I just love Emil's character so much. But we get there, and he's just kind of thinking to himself. He's like, man, I'd love to get married.
Yeah.
He's like, of course, I'd have to find a girl that didn't mind how I look. And then it just kind of leaves it at that. And I was just like, man, it gets me, dude. It gets me.
Yeah.
His character and just everything about him. But even still, he's like being optimistic about his situation, which is like really horrific. But he's making the most of it, right? So I love it.
Yeah.
But we go there, and the prince is there, and Fira, he's marrying Fira,
the
girl
from
and
earlier.
she still doesn't talk, right?
Yep.
But she's grown up. She's bigger now,
Yeah.
And so, it's a fun little moment.
I actually looked into this, and I didn't realize this. I figured they were probably both approximately the same age. So the King of Facade was about 10 in the first act and 15 at this point. I figured she's probably, she was apparently about 5 in the first act, and she's only 10 at this point.
So she's grown up, but not.
Caveat.
Don't judge. Don't judge.
Caveat about Japanese culture and like age of consent and things of that nature are viewed differently.
It is differently. Still, even in Japan, 10 is too young.
10 is young.
But you're right. There is a different age of consent for the nation, I think, is
it's much younger than
12
18.
or 13. But each precinct has their own law. So if you're in the country, you're in a precinct, and none of the precincts, I think, are below like 14 or 15.
Yeah.
But the law of the country technically is like 12.
But I mean, even still, it's much younger
it's lower
than
18. But even in America, there are some, I don't know if you know this, but in Georgia, I think it's like 16.
Oh, really?
There's some
in different states, it's different.
Some, very few, and in the South, go figure. But a couple. No, my family's from the South. I love the South. Don't know.
We're not judging.
Not judging.
That's how we're supposed to do.
I'm
according
just saying,
to Nier, we're supposed to.
But yeah, in
be open
Japan,
to
the
people's
technical
culture.
federal legal age is quite low. It's still not 10 though. It's still not 10.
Yeah, it's still young. I mean, he's 15, so he's technically under the age of consent according to
so
our
the statutory
standards.
laws would still accept this. But.
Whatever. Point is, they're a lot younger than I thought they were.
Holy crap, way younger.
But they're getting
surprising.
Married, and it's really well set up. Like they spend kind of a nice amount of time like building up to this wedding, and then it happens, and the wolves show up.
Yeah.
And they kill Fira, and it's like
in one blow.
It's a really violent,
quick.
But a very sudden death.
Very sudden, but quite bloody.
Graphic and violent, and you fight them, but they kind of run off. And so this begins the king's quest for revenge on the wolves. It's like, as long as these wolves are around, we'll never be safe, and they have to be annihilated from the face of the earth. And his like knights, his like second in command or whatever.
The guards, the royal guards.
As he convinces our party to go kind of alone to face them, he brings his I forget the name of the character, but the leader of the soldiers is blocking the path and is like, I can't let you do this because of this rule and this rule and this rule. But it starts as technicalities, but he eventually kind of boils down to the human element of, this is foolish of you as the king.
Your duty is to the people, not just to this one girl.
Yeah. We're not going to let you just go sacrifice yourself.
Because he would probably die.
We need you as the king, you know? And so like, we'll go.
Right.
You know, and
the guards agree. There's like 10 or 12 of them, and they're all like, we're ready to go.
But however that turns out, it sounded like the king should stay and they should go in his stead, but the king goes anyways.
King goes anyway. King goes with them all. Yeah, they all come.
So we all go together, and you go into fight these wolves. And there's something I noticed, again, probably because I did so many side quests, and I did all the facade side quests. When you kill enemies, and I noticed this with the wolves, it's like they don't stay on the screen. The bodies don't stay on the screen very long. They disappear, which is common because you don't want bodies to pile up for the engine to render, because it will eventually become overloaded. This is actually a problem with a game that landed and I used to play a lot
20 years ago.
Called The Matrix.
Yes. Reloaded, right? Was it Reloaded? Yeah.
Enter the Matrix. Maybe it's Enter the Matrix.
It might have been Enter, yeah.
Enter the Matrix. We had a cheat on, I can't remember what it was, but we were trying to gather, like, I don't know, we were just playing around. We were just having fun with it. But the bodies were just piling up.
Yep, and the guns and all this stuff was just on the floor.
And eventually the whole game like blue screened.
Yeah.
Because there was too many.
Well, it was like, what was it, like 4 frames per second, and then it was
getting
freezing.
Worse and worse. But there was, probably like 1,000 bodies on the ground that the engine was trying to account for and render all these assets at once and all of the items they were dropping. And we're just sitting there fighting in slow motion and just like diving around and just killing thousands of guys. Anyways,
probably unlimited ammo.
This is the reason why in games typically you kill an enemy and the body will remain for a minute and then it will eventually disappear.
It'll disappear, yeah.
And so this was the case with the wolves. You know, they disappear pretty quickly. It gives you enough time to go to the corpse and pick up an item if it left something. But then it'll eventually disappear and the blood stain will disappear.
Yeah.
When you fight the wolves in the wolves' den, they don't disappear. They pile up.
Interesting.
And I believe that has to have been intentional, because you are there to annihilate the wolves. You are there to commit genocide against the wolves.
Look upon what you've done.
And they want you to see the casualties piling up as you're doing this.
Wow.
Now, similarly to earlier, you brought up how Kaine spoke with the Shade in the Aerie, right?
Yeah.
And that it has a language that we couldn't understand, but Kaine can.
That she could.
The wolf, the lead wolf, who is the boss of this section, speaks.
Yeah, and he's kind of shade-ish looking too. So.
And he's a shade, but we don't understand what he's saying in the A playthrough, the first playthrough. This is something that you will see on the second playthrough, which is more of a Kaine-focused perspective playthrough, and she has the ability to understand the language of the shades. So now we're going to understand what the shades are saying as we're slaughtering them and killing them. And we're going to get a very different perspective on the story that way. So, you know, it's kind of weird, and you're sitting there going like, oh, they're giving like this prominent shot to this wolf as it's sitting there going, but we don't know what's going on. We don't know what it's saying.
Yeah.
That will be revealed in the second playthrough.
Nice.
So, anyways, but I took note of the fact that these wolf bodies are just piling up, dude. It's just like, oh my gosh, we're killing hundreds of these freaking wolves. This is a little crazy, right? Anyways, something to keep in mind for the second playthrough.
Good to know.
But you take revenge. The king thanks you,
the prince does not die.
You get a piece from the wolf. That was what the Cerberus
That's
meant.
the piece.
The loyal
Cerberus
wolf
was the wolf.
The loyal wolf Cerberus is a piece of the key. So then you get the Junkheap key. You got the Lost Shrine key. You got the
we didn't do Forest of
Facade
Myth yet.
key. Then you go to the Forest of Myth.
Yeah. You meet the tree of memories, right? And it's a big tree that apparently, the way he describes, I don't know if this is literally how it is, but the way he describes it is every leaf has a memory written on it, right?
Yeah.
Just big tree. And the memories are fading. He's losing leaves, the leaves are falling, he's losing his memories, right? But this tree was like a storage place for general memories of the past, right? And that's, I kind
sort
of alluded
like
to this
an
before.
archival of
An archive, yeah.
human history, but like in memory form.
In memory form. And so I mentioned before how a lot of these people, the sickness that they have, it seems to have some resemblance to like something from the past, right?
Yes.
Now, that could be the tree, that could be their past life, as we'll get to later about what happened to them before things went wrong. But there's a ton of memories with this tree, and so they give a few of them, and the memories are all labeled with something. It says this memory is what encapsulated in this memory is, it can be summarized with one word: sorrow, or like greed, or something like that, right? So there's like a woman who, I think she can't have kids or something like that, but she ends up fighting, and she just destroys everything, and no matter how many times she fights, there's more enemies, and in the end, there's this looming enemy above her that blots out the entire sky, that's massive, and she can do nothing but laugh. And that's the whole memory. These aren't like real
There's like a warrior
stories.
woman.
Yeah. These aren't necessarily stories
It's
with beginning, middle, and end.
Cycling through.
They're just vignettes.
Like visions into a moment of time in a person's life. There's like 3 of them back to back.
3 of them back to back. One of them, which I love, this one says, and I really thought we were going to get a good story here from Drakengard. It says, a red dragon falls from the heavens, ... I've forgotten the rest or something. Oh, shame. I really liked that memory.
Yeah.
And then he moves on to the next one. And I was like, oh, man.
Nice.
That kind of ties things up a little bit.
Drakengard,
but at the very least, it's there. So that's fun. That's cool.
That would probably be the first indication if you had no idea.
If you had no idea.
If you had no idea that this was tied to Drakengard so far. That would be the first point where Drakengard is ever mentioned in this game.
In any way. I think so.
The first time we go like, oh, was that just him being funny, or is like this world somehow connected?
Yeah.
Well, this world is connected to Drakengard because that's a memory from
That's a legit memory.
the world.
And he's the tree of memories. He's not just making up stuff.
Yeah.
So, anyways, the point being, this tree is fading. It's losing its memories. At some point, the memories will all be gone. And I don't know what more to necessarily say about it. This wasn't a difficult thing to get that piece from.
You just have to
it's
do
not
another,
like fighting a boss.
Read another kind of a longer story, and you get the next piece. But, and it's not like fully revealed what this tree is.
Not really.
Yet. Because again, a lot of this is kind of a trope of JRPGs, is the exposition dump at the very end, where like everything is like unveiled, It's a part of the genre that I've grown to not love so much. Like, I appreciate where you have more reveals kind of scattered throughout the whole story.
Instead of all at once.
Instead of saving it for this mind-bending twist at the end. It's like, see, all along, it's kind of become a, what do you call it? Like, just a part of the DNA of Japanese RPGs.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is, it has Final Fantasy VII and Xenogears to thank for that, right? They kind of started that trend.
Yes,
and everything from that has been...
It's like there's once that one piece goes in, then everything makes sense. But they withhold that piece for
till the end.
And
so it's like Chrono Cross does this in a way I don't like.
Yeah.
A lot of games will save these big reveals for the end to try and like gut punch you with a big secret. And it's, the effectiveness of it is... it varies from game to game, but it tends to be a little tiresome that's kind of become the way Japanese RPGs reveal their secrets. But anyways, there's more to this tree than it just being a natural tree. I mentioned the word supercomputer earlier.
Yeah. So you walk into it, and the screen just goes black. You don't necessarily see this tree.
Yes.
Right. It is said what it is, but you don't actually see the tree. But
and that makes it kind of hard to visualize too.
Exactly.
But there is a shade possessing or that's inside the tree that is like consuming.
That's right. That's
the memories, right? So, anyways, you kill that shade, and that's where you get the piece for the key.
Wasn't there? Oh no, this is a good memory to bring up. This kind of, you don't know what importance this has until later, but he gives a specific memory of a young boy who ends up in the hospital because he has some disease, some illness that's difficult for him, that slowly leads him, it's probably Black Scroll type stuff, it slowly leads him to down this path of misery, where he starts to hate everything. And at some point, there's this young girl that shows up to just kind of like cheer him up and to talk to him every day.
Because his parents abandoned him. They can't watch him suffer anymore.
They can't, they're like, well, we can't bear to be around him anymore. And so this kid's just alone. So this girl shows up, and he really enjoys her company, but he doesn't know how to like deal with her. He doesn't know how to be. He doesn't know how. I don't know. He can't help the misery, the empty pit that he feels in his stomach.
Yeah.
And so slowly, even though he's very happy when she's around, slowly he begins to say things. He begins to be more pessimistic, more cynical. He starts to kind of lash out at people, including this girl. At some point, and it even says, he knows in his mind that if he keeps acting like this, she's going to stop coming.
Yeah.
She's going to stop coming back. But he can't help it because he's lost something important to him. He's lost his humanity. He's slowly becoming like this miserable creature that's not even like human, right?
Yeah.
He is just this miserable thing that all he wants is rage and suffering in the world, because that's what he's subject to, and he just can't get past it. There's no getting past it. So, and then the story just kind of ends, right?
Yeah,
and
a setup for what we'll learn about shades.
But I love, in this episode, so it's not, but I love the tree so much because all of these vignettes are relevant to the story. They're very relevant. They don't feel or seem relevant, but they are. And, you know, when you find things out later, the hints are scattered throughout these stories.
Yeah. Good stuff.
Yeah.
So after that, you go to the Aerie, and this is the big meal moment. I'm guessing the one that got to you. If not this, then in the Shadow.
Yeah. The Shadow one was the hardest one.
Okay.
But this one was rough too.
All right. So I wrote down that I felt it was a little tropey, because they go back to the village first, and Popola gives you, of course, the mission to go to the Aerie.
Yeah.
It was a little tropey that literally everyone is saying, it's very strange that the Aerie, a place that is as secluded as possible, these people who hate any interaction with the outside world, are all of a sudden writing letters, inviting people, come, we've opened a shop, and we want to trade with everyone.
Come look.
Please come to our village now. It's like, this is very not typical of these people, and this is definitely a trap set up by the Shadowlord. Clearly. And the response from Nier is, I don't care, I'm going anyway. Which is always what happens whenever, it doesn't matter what it is. It's not even just JRPGs. It's like superhero movies, it's like anything. When the main character knows it's a trap, and they're going to go anyways.
It is undoubtedly a trap. As he walks into Dol Guldur with Radagast.
Like, they know it's a trap, they're going to do
what
it
are you going to do,
anyways.
Not go in? That the story's over if you don't go in.
But it's just like, I don't know, it's just
I know, there needs to be a better way to get around that.
So the first time when he said that, I was like, oh man, like, of course they're just going to go anyway, and there's going to be a trap, and everything's going to go bad, and it's like, you didn't like come up with some kind of plan for that, or some sort of contingency.
If it's a trap, then I'll just kill everything.
Yes.
Okay.
But
sort of.
The consequence of doing this anyway is what makes it work in a way that changes your perspective on the main characters.
Yeah.
Kind of blind, obsessive journey to get Yona back no matter what.
Yes.
So there's a heavy consequence to this action, and it's great. And so the whole thing works.
Very well done. Because things don't work out. See, if they went out, it's a trap, it's fine, I'll just use my kung fu.
I'll just fight them, and then I win, and then we escape the consequence.
The trap didn't work. It's like, no, depending on how you look at it, sure, that is kind of what happened. But it did not go the way that they wanted, and it is so obvious. Yeah.
So they get there, and the people the mayor didn't write any letter like this.
Yeah.
He's like, what are you talking about? But there's
a little
a mercantile, a shop
in the town center,
and it's like, okay, well, these people seem to be ready to talk. They'll sell you stuff.
Yeah.
And there's one person in particular you talk to, and he asks you a question about shades. And the response from Nier is like, I'm going to destroy them all, you know. And he's like, really? All of them, everyone. He like freaks out, and then it reveals it's a shade.
Yeah.
And this was the first time where you saw that the shades have some serious resentment toward Nier. They see him as the bloodthirsty villain,
Shadowlord,
trying to destroy them, right? There's some sentience. They're speaking, and even Vice is surprised by this, right?
Yeah.
It's like these shades aren't just monsters; they can actually speak,
and they can put on a human form of sorts. You know, like they looked like people when you first, were approaching them.
And so,
and
anyways, you have to fight your way out of this, but it was a trap, and there's all these shades trying to kill you.
By the way, were you paying much attention to the items that you were picking up from the shades as you killed them, as the game progressed, specifically at this particular point? So this is one of the things I took notes on.
That's interesting.
Some shades drop interesting objects. One dropped an old school book.
Oh, yes, okay.
In the Aerie.
Yes.
Some random mundane, like a baseball bat that's dented.
The little shades will drop things like coloring books.
Yes.
And school books.
Yes.
And things like that. It's like, what is this
Toys.
item? Yeah. And like, the larger shades will drop like tools or like... anyways, other types of items that are a little out of the ordinary.
Yeah.
I know exactly what you're talking about now, yes. So
that's weird. Okay, that's
yes.
All right,
okay,
let's keep
so you fighting your way out of the area, and there's a lot of casualties.
Yeah.
There's one point where there's a boy and a woman, and Kaine...
Oh, that's right, brother and sister, right?
Kaine insists that this woman is a shade. Now, she would know, because she can tell, she knows the shade language, she's possessed by a shade.
Yes.
She knows what's a shade and what's not a shade. And he's like, I don't care, it's my sister, I love her. And she kills the woman, and this obviously enrages the brother. And it's like the people of the area are turning against you now, and like everything's going wrong. And there's, a lot of people are dying because of your being there and going into this trap anyway.
That you knew was a trap,
And there's a big boss that essentially, Emile points this out, but Kaine gets cut and
by
falls unconscious.
Either the brother or the sister.
Yeah, gets cut
when their guard was down.
Unconscious.
Yeah.
And so she's down for the remainder of the section, and you're fighting with Emile against this boss, which has essentially like consumed the souls, or I don't know if it's the souls or if it's even the bodies of the villagers of the area are inside of this thing.
Yeah.
And Emile says that. He's like, there's people in there, like, but you fight it anyways.
He's like, there's a way we can
get them out. Save them.
Yeah.
So he's fighting for that reason. Nier is fighting to kill shades. That's all he cares about. And it's an interesting boss. There's an eye on it. It's like a floating sphere with a little eye, and you just hit that eye to do damage. And Emile kind of like locks it in place so you can sneak on the backside.
Yeah, you got to go around back
and fight it from there. Eventually, it gets to the point where Emile kind of like loses it to a power that emerges in him. He's kind of losing control.
Yeah.
And
which is likely what happened to his sister.
Yeah.
Because she went crazy and we had no choice.
Kind of like a berserk
mentality
mode, and he just nukes the whole area.
He kills everything.
Everything.
Except for us.
We get out and we're kind of looking at it. I even like took a moment to stand there on kind of the cliffside and just kind of pan through. Like the whole thing is just wiped off the face of the earth. And Emile is really, really struggling with this. Like, what have I done? And this is the point where I started looking at the main character Nier a little different. Because he's like, I killed all of those people, all those innocent people. And he's like,
Kaine is like, oh yeah.
But you saved our lives. It's just like,
Oh dear, but that is Yoko Taro's the theme, right?
Yes.
As we mentioned last episode about the Iraq War, specifically looking at it from the outsider perspective of someone from Japan, and seeing that, but you saved the American lives, right?
Yeah.
But how many Iraqi lives died? To this specific one, I had a few notes here because. Okay, so what I wrote down here is that the Aerie people were right. They didn't trust you. They don't like foreigners. They told you to leave over and over. In thinking we were helping them, we continually brought death and destruction to their people over and over until finally they were completely destroyed forever, all of them. And we ignored what they wanted, thinking that we were helping. Now, to some degree, it's probable that Nier knew he wasn't necessarily helping them, he was helping himself, right?
Yeah.
He wasn't even trying to help them, he was trying to help himself. But there is a famous quote from Ronald Reagan. I'm just going to read this quote. I don't care what you guys think about him, but this quote is wonderful because this exemplifies what Yoko Taro's point is here. And I think the Aerie is where this is demonstrated most specifically. Yeah. So the quote from Reagan goes... Ronald Reagan, as he said, some 79 or something like that, he said, the most scary words anyone can hear is someone knocks on your door saying, "Hi, we're from the U.S. government and we're here to help."
Yeah.
So he says that's the scariest thing anyone can hear. Well, my thinking was, yeah, if you're an American citizen and the government's coming to solve your problems, oh no, that's so bad, because that's how Reagan meant it. But what if you're an Iraqi citizen and America comes knocking on your door saying, "Hi, we're the United States government and we're here to help"?
Oh, yeah.
That's way scarier.
They're way scarier.
That's way scarier. In fact,
scarier.
Because that was always the justification. We're helping these people. We're helping them. Anyways.
And that was kind of what we were there in the Aerie to do.
We're going to help. Emil's going to help. But every time, save them. They don't like us, but we're going to prove them wrong.
Every time we were there to help, there were casualties.
Every freaking
This is
time.
Why the Aerie people are the way they are.
This is why they do that.
Why they don't want anyone to come around.
And they were right, because in the end... they're gone. They don't exist anymore.
And it's because...
and we do.
He cared more about saving Yona. Therefore, I don't care. It's a trap. I'm going anyways.
Yes.
And that's why the consequence really works. It's like they take something that is such a common trope in these types of epic stories where there's always a trap laid out. They know it's a trap, but they're going to succeed anyway. And he just absolutely flipped that around and made it into a horrific event.
Yeah.
And it was something that really hit me hard.
That was great. The storytelling here is phenomenal.
Yeah, it's really good.
It is extremely impactful, and it makes you, because you may look at Nier, you may look down on Nier because of his comments about this, because he's like, oh, we got to keep the living need to keep on living, right? We got to keep going. We're alive, and let's move on. And Kaine says something similar, and hers is less like, oh, we're the important ones. Hers is more like, just don't think about it. You can't think about this. Like you just got to try to move forward and do better from now on.
Yeah.
But Emil is dang it, I can't remember exactly where I was going here. Oh yeah, he's the one that did it, right? He's the one that did it. But he is the easiest to forgive for what happened.
Yeah.
Because he's torn up about it. He thought he could save them and he couldn't. And it's almost like he's the type of person who would actually learn the lesson. This is the first time I think he went to the Aerie, right?
Yeah.
He wasn't there before. And he was like, I can control it, I can do it, and he couldn't. But he would actually learn a lesson from it, whereas Nier doesn't learn lessons. Like he doesn't. He doesn't, like his character doesn't grow except to become more hardened to the world and more like he was. Like he's just going down this path and he just keeps going further and further and further down this path. Whereas Emil and to some extent Kaine as well are both willing to kind of stop and look around and veer course a little bit. Nier is not.
Nope.
And so these other characters are very good to have around him specifically for this reason, despite the fact that they may be the ones that ultimately, cause some level of destruction. But Nier is the one who is spearheading this whole thing. So,
and that was kind of
this was a powerful scene for me.
Yeah, this was kind of a secondary theme of my own interpretation, my own reading of the story, I guess, was this refusal to accept loss.
Yeah.
Leading to greater and greater and greater loss. Like,
sure.
and we'll get into this. This is essentially where it culminates in the Shadowlord's castle. But before we talk about that, I need to point out that we have about 10 minutes before our camera's memories will go out.
Okay.
But this will continue to run the audio.
Which one?
And I feel like we need to get through the Shadowlord's castle. It's the last part of what we wanted to cover today. And it's going to kind of bring the whole discussion to a close. We won't have to retread any ground next time. So when the cameras go black, if you're the viewing audience on YouTube, hang in with us. I have ordered new cards that are much larger, and they're coming in next week. So we'll never have a problem with running out of memory in the cameras again. Yeah. So they have battery power. They'll never run out of battery power, so they run in, and we'll have cards that are so large that we'll never possibly, unless we did a 12 10 or 12 hour podcast, that's the only way we could run out. So this will be the last time this will be an issue. From now on, we'll never have a time constraint. But we do need to talk about the Shadowlord's castle, I think.
Yeah, so we leave the Aerie. That was, I think that was the sacrifice one, right? Which is fitting. And that gave us the key that then we take to the Lost Shrine. Dude, we missed. There's another thing we missed, though.
What did we miss?
We can cover it later. It's the new content for 1.2, which is the sunken ship, the shipwreck.
Yeah, let's talk about that in the future, because
we'll do that next
I didn't
episode.
even have this in the Gestalt. I haven't even played it. I don't even know what it is.
Yeah, it's new content. So we'll talk about that next time.
Okay, so you can take the key to the Lost Shrine now, and you can get into the Shadowlord's castle. That very first entrance to the Shadowlord's castle was really cool, because you come in and it's like a courtyard presidium.
Yeah, with this tree in the middle.
Corporate-like. I mean, you see kind of skyscraper-like structures in the background. It's not like a castle in the traditional sense.
No,
it's like
that's true. That's true.
It's like a modern-day type of building. But you know, the first indication is that there's a door on the other side. You run over there and go through the door. But you know, when you first enter an area in a lot of video games, it'll have like a couple of like shots that like establish the space.
Yeah.
Right, that sort of show you, this is over here, and then like this camera here kind of shows the birds,
and then
it shows this, and it takes maybe about 7 or 8 seconds to like show you the area, and it's like, okay, I have a sense of orientation of where I'm at. So then you go run and you go through the door and you enter, and it does that again.
Place, yep.
And I was like, oh, they're showing me. Oh, I see what he's doing here.
We're on an infinite loop.
We're in a loop. Yeah. If I go through the door again, I'm going to see that over and over and over. I need to do something in this room.
Do something else,
Kind of a cool little stylistic.
Yeah. Well, and there's a story reason for that as well. And Devil and Popola, well, I guess I'm getting ahead of us here.
We're almost there. We're almost at Devil and Popola.
We'll get there.
You have to talk to the birds.
It's almost as if this sequence is trying to confuse you and get you to turn back and go away. Like you're not getting anywhere. Go back, rethink your strategy, see what's going on, but just turn around and
Yeah. So you have to talk to the birds, and I found this interesting because you have to give the birds like passwords, right?
Yeah, and
but
they're general.
These are things that we haven't learned about Nier's world yet.
No, and I think that's why they only gave 2 answers.
Yeah, 2 answers. It's like
it's not like a big multiple choice.
Because if you get it wrong, you just do it again.
Yeah.
But you learn for the first time about, they refer to shells, like how to preserve humanity. You separate the body and the soul.
Yeah.
You preserve the shell so that they can be reunited later.
And why did humans go extinct was one of the ones.
Yeah.
And say because of the black scrawl.
Because the black disease or whatever they call it.
Yeah.
Anyways.
And then how do you separate? Yeah, and then what do you do? You put them back together.
They're starting to give answers about like what the whole plan was from back in the day to preserve humanity. Back from the very beginning of the game when Yona and Nier were in the little abandoned grocery store. From that time period, what was the plan to preserve humanity all these many years later? Right? The hook that got us interested in the game, it's almost like you've forgotten about it at this point. How are these people alive and 1,400 years later?
How are they connected? Yeah.
I don't get it.
Yeah.
Now we're going to learn the answers to this, right?
Yes, finally.
So you get Vice gets the answers right, and you enter into the Shadowlord's castle. Now, here's something that, again, I've learned to not love about this, just the genre, the JRPG genre.
Sure.
The final dungeon / gauntlet of bosses is a very, for me, it just is, it drags.
Yes.
It's like you have to just continually elevate the
And it's
situation.
like they want you to fight
freaking 12 boss fights, and then you get to the final boss,
and they're
like
each
7
versions of the previous bosses you'd already fought.
Yes, and it's just like, dude, I am so ready to just end the game. Just please.
That happens.
It has the opposite effect on me these days. You know, even when I played Final Fantasy VII, which was the first real JRPG I played. I played Pokemon before that, but that's not really what we're talking about. I played Final Fantasy VII for the first time. I remember the end of the game just feeling really tedious. It's just like, man, can I just get to the end? Like all these random battles and all these
Kingdom
different
Hearts
bosses
does something similar.
It's just, come on. Can we just get to the point? So that's just me. You know, I wish that they would just make one really, really good boss fight at the end instead of 12
multiple.
of them.
And especially the way they ended one of them, because the Prince of the Facade shows up with his guards.
Okay. And this is where, actually, I made a note about that.
My gosh,
so you're ascending the tower and you fight a freaking boar, which is one of the most annoying enemies in the whole game, even back from the Northern Plains
so much
to fight.
HP,
You have to fight that, but then you have to fight it again, and then you have to fight an armored version of it, and you have to fight the armored version like 3 times, and it's like chasing you up, and it just keeps going on and on and on.
Yes.
But this is where I think we're going to reach that point of maybe some disagreement about how a scene landed for you and me. There was a moment at the very end with Yona that I thought was just beautifully executed. And then there was this moment with the King of Facade and a moment with Emil that I felt were a little feels over real-y to me.
Well, I suppose, because I don't actually know what happened for any of this.
I know, and so I want to explain it.
We might need to go through all the endings in order to get what even actually happened.
To really summarize the castle, because there's not that much to talk about. First, you fight Devila and Popola.
They ask you to turn back. We find out that they're androids.
They are androids, not humans.
And that's why, remember when Grimoire Weiss was like, ooh, it must be, the reason this song has been sung for thousands of years is because it's such a catchy tune. That must be why.
Yes.
It's because Devila has been alive for 1,400 years.
And
she's been singing the same song the whole time.
They're like overseers of this project.
But they aren't replicants, they're androids.
Yes, they were built to make sure that the plan succeeded.
Yes.
And what they reveal to you is that our characters, and none of the humans right now that we know of are actually humans.
Yes.
They are what are called replicants.
Everyone is a replicant.
They are bodies created to preserve the souls of humans from more than 1,000 years ago to eventually be reunited with the body. The soul will eventually go back into that body again.
Yeah. I think the replicants were supposed to stay back, keep Earth running, make sure everything didn't just go to crap. But they would not have died from
and this was something I had a question on. It's not, I read about it, and I think it's revealed in a report or in one of the extra playthroughs. They're waiting for an answer to the Black Scrawl disease.
Right, or they're just waiting it out. They're just trying to wait for it to go away on its own.
They're trying to find a way to, they're preserving the souls of humans for a time when that disease is no longer an issue to reunite them. Yeah. And so these bodies can still contract that disease, right?
Yeah.
So they have this program where because the replicants still age and die, but they just take the data and they essentially rebirth them again.
Yes.
Until they're like in a cycle where they just keep getting reborn.
And it just keeps going.
And the shell is preserved from the data that was taken and preserved of that human being's life, but the soul is waiting to be reemerged with the body.
Yeah.
However,
and the data gets corrupted if the soul relapses. They use the word relapses. If the soul becomes corrupted, then that data becomes corrupted and the replicant can't be reborn.
And the body gets sick.
And then the body gets what they call the
Which is why Yona has the Black Scrawl, because her Gestalt, which is the soul, is relapsing.
Yes.
Which is why Yona has the Black Scrawl and the body is affected by this.
And relapsing is when it turns into a shade, basically.
Yes, and this is why the Shadowlord, who we will talk about the identity of in a minute, needs to take Yona's body away. Because Well, we'll get to that in a minute. But, okay, they're overseeing this project.
Devil and Popola, yeah.
And it's gotten to a point where the Black Scrawl they've not found a resolution to this, but all of these shades, all of these gestalts are relapsing, which is like this plague of shades everywhere.
Yeah.
And it's like we kind of are running out of options, and we need to just reunite the souls with the bodies.
Right.
Which was what
the few that are left.
The Black and the White Book reuniting was supposed to do.
Yeah.
They were supposed to come together, and it was supposed to put all the souls back into the bodies again.
Right.
But Vice is a traitor to that cause and decided to not do it. And so Devil and Popola are like, you are a traitor, and don't make us fight you. Please, we don't want to do this, but that's what we were programmed to do, is to make sure that the souls are reunited with the bodies again.
And it is literally their only purpose. So while they have developed a very wide set of emotions and feelings and their own thoughts, they cannot override their programming. They are androids. They have no choice. Yeah. As they like Nier, but they're going to fight him to kill him because that's their job.
Yes.
He's preventing them from doing what they need to do.
Yes.
So Grimoire Weiss has a quote here that I wrote down. But it's funny because Weiss, he's so understanding of their situation. He has a similar situation himself. We find more about that later. It's not quite the same, but he's got his own issues as well. He says, those two, meaning Devil and Popola, have watched the world wither from time immemorial. The cruelness of such a fate is difficult to imagine.
Yep.
So like they were programmed to just sit there and watch the world completely like fall apart. And they're just the ones they're the gatekeepers just to make sure that, I don't know, that there's still some replicants left by the end of it all.
And this is, for those who have played Automata, you see some of the connections there because all of the characters in Automata. Is that a spoiler for Automata? Do I have to put up a spoiler warning?
Spoiler alert! Spoiler alert!
Maybe we should, or maybe we should bring it up later.
I'll put a spoiler warning for Automata.
Go ahead.
I'll edit it in. They're all androids.
Yeah.
And they just don't know that all the humans are dead in Automata. They don't realize.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, the leaders of the androids do. They know the truth.
Right.
But in order to give purpose to androids who live forever,
that's
they
the
make them keep fighting.
The Nietzschean philosophy.
Right. You need a purpose in life, otherwise you're aimless and you'll be miserable and everything will suck. So they keep a purpose by fighting for humanity, even though humanity's been extinct for thousands of years. When the last of the shades dies.
Yeah.
Right? When the last of the Gestalts dies, humanity doesn't exist anymore. And all of these shells, these replicants, would eventually die, and like humanity's erased. And thousands of years after that, androids are still fighting this invasion of robots or whatever and trying to preserve Earth for humanity that doesn't even exist anymore. So, anyways, that's kind of the Popola-Devila connection into the android role of the Nier universe, right?
Yep.
So, anyways, you fight them, and
we beat them.
You kill. So you have to fight them twice. The first time they kind of escape, and you're going to continue after them. But then you fight this boar over and over again, and then the
Facade people.
The king of Facade is there, and this is this comes across to me as feels over reels because it seems arbitrary.
Yeah.
Like, how on earth did he get there? There's like one path up that we were going up. I didn't see them. How did they know we were here? Yeah. When did they show up? They seem to be coming from the other direction where we were going up. They're like descending the way we're ascending to show up into this room so the king of Facade can sacrifice himself so that all the audience can cry, oh, how sad is it that the king of Facade died, sacrificed himself to save us.
So
there's no logic to this scenario.
It should not have been there. It makes no sense. And maybe someone in the comments can explain why that happened, because it makes no sense.
It's like, how did they get there?
It's not even
They didn't have the key. They wouldn't have had any of the answers to give to the birds to get into the room.
But here's the thing: did the doors close after we went in the room?
So did they follow us up, or because it looked to me like they came down from the door?
It seemed like they were from a different direction,
or they just appeared suddenly.
Yeah. And either way, it's stupid. And I don't know, maybe I shouldn't say that word in reference to this type of thing, but I really didn't appreciate it. I did not like it at all.
I didn't feel the weight or the impact of that sacrifice.
No, it didn't
because
matter. It didn't matter at all.
It felt so
in fact,
out of left field.
I was kind of upset that the prince, it's like, sacrifice yourself, whatever. There's like all the guards that are with him too.
Yes. But it wasn't.
You're sacrificing them. You are sacrificing them.
Wasn't the whole point of like the leader guard that we need you, the king, to be like? Why would he ever agree to go on some sort of suicidal mission where their king is going to get killed? What's going to happen in Facade after that? Who's going to be? He doesn't have any kids. There's no king to like pass the kingdom on to. Like, what are they going to do? Did they write some new rule about like passage of like?
That's a good question.
Like,
that's right.
There's no explanation or thought or logic as to why they would be doing this. And like, in order for me personally, and this is a thing I go back and forth on with some of the audience, where it's just like, you just gotta like feel the impact and like not think about it so hard. But it's like, in order for me to feel it, it has to be convincing.
Right.
And it's not convincing to me, based on all the interactions we had before, that they would ever let the king do this, or that he would even be willing to do it, or that he would even know it's happening, like that he would even know to show up there, or you know what I mean? So it's like,
I know. There's too much that they'd have to convince us of in order for that scene to actually mean something first.
So I didn't like it.
No.
And then similarly, you go and fight Devla and Popola a second time, like the real boss fight this time. Probably, actually, in my opinion, the easiest boss in the whole game.
Oh, yeah.
Because when they telegraph when they're going to show up.
Yes.
So there's like a thing on the floor, and the AI of your allies will turn in the direction before it even appears there.
Nice.
So I know where it's coming. I roll over there, and you wait for a second, and then there's like a knockback. You can like disrupt their attacks. So the second they're vulnerable, hit, disappear. I know exactly where you're going to appear. Roll over there, wait, hit. They never touch me.
Nice.
I felt like the Shadowlord's castle, and like a lot of it at the end felt like it was a product of being rushed for time.
Which is unfortunate. Why do you do something that long and big you don't have to do if you are rushed for time? Some of it might have been that they left so much story stuff for the very end that they were like, we can't cut it because then we're cutting story stuff.
Again, I would rather have one really well-designed boss fights instead of like 7 kind of bad ones. As like your epic conclusion to the story, right? It's like they were more concerned about elevating the situation in JRPG fashion than they were about creating a fight that is actually meaningful and substantial. And so like none of them felt very good. None of them felt very satisfying. All of them were too easy, and it just felt really long and dragged out. Also, while there goes the camera, while you're ascending the Lost Shrine, like you're climbing ladders, and it's so slow climbing these ladders.
Yes, that's true.
It's so fetching slow.
We're not like Assassin's Creed, just
but the shades will be sitting there waiting for you, and they'll hit you off the ladders. So there's just like a lot of design ideas where I can tell they didn't have time enough to polish it all. And so the Shadowlord's castle as a level felt that way all the way through for me. So that's probably part of why I felt the way I did about this next scene. Maybe I was just frustrated generally. But when you finish off Devla and Popola, I mean, it's a nice little scene where Devla dies first, and Popola's furious, and there's no stopping
and we're like,
now.
Can you stop? And she's like,
there's no stopping
why?
At this
because
point.
You killed my sister? Like,
I feel like all of that's wrapped up really well into the core theme of Nier. But then, again, we've talked about the difference between hard and soft magic. And magic, when it's resolving problems, when you don't understand how it works, can be a problem, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So, Emil comes up with this great thing. I'll create a little shield and fly away. And we're just going to escape over here. But then Popola has power to trap it. And so it's
pull it back.
And so the idea is that her power is too overwhelming for whatever power Emil is using. And it's going to overpower them. They're going to die. She's going to kill them.
Right.
But then Emil decides to self-sacrifice and get them away, but he'll have to die in order to save them. Now, again, the reason why I feel like this is it came across as a little feels over reels for me is because I don't understand the magic. I don't understand why he doesn't have. He has like an understanding of all magic now, right?
Right. Well,
there wasn't any other. He couldn't pull some other magic out.
Well, he doesn't have control over it, and that's why he killed all the Aerie people. Like he knows how to do it, but it gets out of control for him. He can't like focus it or something.
And I don't even know what he does per se. It's like a black hole kind of.
Yes,
or something.
he nuclear bombs her, but it's weird because so he falls into her magic. And you're right. It's almost like a black hole because it's almost like he's falling into an abyss.
Yes.
As he falls into her whatever she's doing and whatever she's doing. I don't know what she's doing.
It's the combination of their
magic. It's possible
magic.
that she created a black hole-ish kind of thing. He falls into it so that he can be all the way in the middle, and then he blows up his nuclear bomb just to blow up everything. Right. Theoretically, including himself. However,
it pushes them in their shield to the other side.
Yeah.
And he.
But it does away with Popola, I think.
But. It's hard for me because I would have liked to have a better understanding of why there's no other answer. When there's soft magic and I don't know any of the rules and I don't understand, it's hard for me to understand like there's really no other way or like what's even happening. And if there was some, and you don't necessarily have to explain all of the rules of the magic, right? You don't have to go like into such details, someone like Brandon Sanderson or something. But it helps to set up that this magic does this and this magic does this earlier in the story. So that when Devila uses that magic, we go, oh, that's what that magic does. It annihilates.
Right, this does seem to be
it's like a god particle that erases existence if you touch it. I'm making this, I'm pulling this out of my butt, but the point is you set up what Devila or Popola's magic does earlier in the story. So that when it shows up, you go, oh, that's the unescapable spell.
Right.
But you've also set up earlier that there is a counter to that spell, but it requires a sacrifice and for this and this and this reason.
It requires to happen at a certain
And so
place.
then Emil and the audience, from understanding how the magic work goes, this is the only way to save you, I have to do this, then it would have worked for me.
So the moment doesn't work for me either.
Oh, no, I was surprised. I thought this was the scene that got to you.
No, it does get to me. Not from a story perspective.
Okay.
From a character perspective.
Okay.
From the character of Emil, not the story. The story, it was confusing. I have no idea what's going on. But how often do you watch a movie or play a game or anything like that where the hero decides to self-sacrifice and as they're going into the self-sacrifice, they're like gung-ho the whole time, even past the point of no return. They're like, gotta do this. And I could bring examples, but I don't want to just tell everyone
the characters
movies
change,
where the main character dies.
Affected by...
Yes. Yeah. But say, I don't know. Well, see, there's one great example, but I just don't know if everyone's seen the movie.
Okay.
But it's an example within the Marvel universe. So that's, I won't, is that enough? I don't know. I don't think that's close enough. There is well, in movies in general, when the hero decides I'm going to do a heroic thing, the heroic thing happens and the hero doesn't like second guess it. You don't read the hero's thoughts as they're dying. If you do, it is, oh, I'm so glad I did this for you, right?
Yeah.
So Emil self-sacrificing, that didn't get to me at all because the story thing didn't warrant that, and I didn't feel it.
Do you know what it felt like to me?
What I did feel.
Just a quick interjection, sorry. The movie AI.
Yes.
Where at the end of the movie, I mean, the robot kid, the whole movie just wants to be reunited with his mother.
Yes.
And the aliens... I guess it's a spoiler for AI if anyone cares.
I know, I'm saying I don't want to spoil it.
If anyone cares, artificial intelligence, AI, Steven Spielberg movie from early 2000s.
Haley Joel Osment.
Haley Joel Osment's the main character. He's a little robot kid who looks and behaves almost exactly like a real child.
Yes.
So he wants to be reunited with his mother, his human mother. And the aliens are like, we can bring her back, but only for one day.
Yeah.
It's like an arbitrary constraint that exists only to give you a tearjerker ending. Like there's no setup to it. There's no like logical explanation for why that's the case. It's like they're just manipulating their audience to make them cry and to have a sad ending without like earning it, without like doing the work, putting in the work in the story to make that moment work and make sense.
Right.
That's what I felt about this Emil's sacrifice. It's like, do you know what would be the most sad thing we could do? Is sacrifice Emil. So we're just going to do it.
Yeah.
But we're not going to earn the reason, the circumstance for how it comes about. That was why I didn't like the scene.
I 100% agree with you. I do. I really do.
Okay.
So what gets me is after Emil has sacrificed, it was after he had made the decision. Because usually for a sacrificing moment where, like in The Return of the King, where Frodo's on Sam's like, don't you let go. And you do kind of feel for a split second there, like, oh, Frodo might actually let go. But that's the decision. And of course he didn't, so that's why I'm even using that example.
Yeah.
It's the after that decision was made. So the story happened, whatever, and Emil, some things happened, Deus Ex something or other. It happens, things go how they go. But as soon as Emil lets go, and as soon as he's out of view of our characters, I think Kaine and Nier and Grimoire Weiss.
Yes.
He curls up in the fetal position.
Yes.
And he's like, what's it like to die? Now, there are some movies like Return of the King where Pippin's like, oh, what's it like to die? And but he's immediately reassured. Gandalf's like, white shores under a swift sunrise. And that's not so bad, right? Okay, now I'm ready to self-sacrifice. Emil doesn't get that.
No.
He lets go. He falls into the nothingness. We don't know what it is, but that leads to the character moment for Emil that he's going to sacrifice, and as soon as he lets go and decides to do it, he starts second guess, like, do I want to do this?
That's true.
What is it like to die? I'm cold. I think that's one of the things he said. He like huddles up and he's like, I feel cold. And he's just like getting smaller and smaller and drifting further away and further away until the final moment where it's like, and the thing happens, right? And he does the thing. Story-wise, I 100% understand that doesn't work. But character-wise, it's like, holy crap, that's real. Like, that's very real. Yeah. And most movies or stories just in general, they don't like show the characters like real, like what a human actually probably does think when they get shot in front of somebody else. They're not thinking, oh, I'm so glad I got shot, and you're alive though, right? Please, say goodbye to my wife or something, and they die. Or I don't know what it is. This is different. This is like completely self-isolated. Like there is nothing in the world anymore, and you've just given up everything, but you don't get to see the fruits of it. Anyways, the way that they dealt with it as a character moment, and it was just like 2 or 3 lines that Emil says as he floats away, is just like, whoa, that's freaking powerful, and it was extremely well done, not necessarily from the story perspective, but from the character of Emil. It touches the human nerve in a way that like very little else can ever do, and it makes you kind of think a little bit like this is just a bigger deal than it seems. And Emil was so quick to do it because of his personality, but when it came time to do it, it was a really, really hard thing to do. And I don't think you get that from other stories when people sacrifice. It doesn't seem so hard for them to do it.
Yes.
Like it seems like, oh, of course I did it. Oh, I did it for you, and this just lands completely differently.
I really like that, actually. That's a really interesting perspective.
Yeah.
Because like you're saying, they treat the self-sacrifice in other stories like, the person is now at peace in the next life, or that person is smiling down on us afterward the fact.
Just like immediately.
And received their glory afterwards.
It always shows that warmth later on.
And Emil is initially speaking about the sacrifice as if it's going to be okay.
Yes, to his friends.
It'll be all right.
And even to himself.
Yeah, but as soon as death begins, there's this horrific doubt.
It was it's scary.
And fear.
Yeah.
That, wait, what does this really mean?
Right.
What's actually going to happen to me?
Where am I going to go? Is there a heaven? Is there, like, what is this? Like, what, is it over? Is everything over for me? I've lived for so long, and is everything just, like, over now?
I agree with that.
Yeah. That was powerful. That was very powerful.
I do agree with that. That is really, really interesting twist on the self-sacrifice trope in itself that I think about a little differently now that you've mentioned it. So thank you for that.
I like it.
Okay.
Emil is my favorite character, hands down.
Emil's a really good character. I like Emil. So then you get to the Shadowlord's chamber, like the end of the game, right? You fight the boss. The Shadowlord is
it's kind of like a bedroom thing, and Yona's there. She's
Yona's
just kind of laying down.
And this is where you kind of like, it kind of pulls together the whole like Gestalts and replicants reuniting thing. Because she's like, Dad? And I guess
brother.
it would be brother in the other version, right?
Yes.
And our character is like,
there,
yes, I'm finally here. But she's not talking to him. She goes past him, and you see them cross.
Yeah.
And she's talking to the Shadowlord.
That's where it finally clicks.
And it's like, oh, the Shadowlord is the Gestalt of our main character's replicant body. Right?
And if you look, and once you know that, you look at him and you're like, he looks similar.
Like him.
But you didn't make that connection before.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't. I don't know who did. Some people might have.
So it's like the Shadowlord is the soul of the man that we saw, or the boy that we saw in the prologue sequence who fought off all those shades in the abandoned mall or whatever building, grocery store.
So he became like the original Gestalt that worked because he had some motivation, I suppose.
Yes.
And Yona, anyways.
Yeah, so he and Yona from the first scene are these, the Shadowlord and the Gestalt that's been reunited into the shell of Shona, the replicant Yona, who was part of the program that were reborn over and over and over and over and over again. And so, anyways, the Yona that is speaking is the Gestalt.
The Gestalt, which you would say it's not the actual Yona. No, it is the actual Yona.
Yes.
The real human Yona from the beginning,
is speaking
it's
to
not
her
the one that
father
we
or
knew
brother,
the whole game.
who was the one from the prologue, who is now the Shadowlord.
Yes.
And reveals that these replicants have developed their own personalities, their own consciousness.
Yeah.
And it's not right for us to, because she's saying, I can sense this other being inside of me. She's crying. She wants
That
her
misses
father.
her,
She loves her father just as much as I love you, or brother just as much as I love you.
And she has to fight that.
Yeah, and she's like, I have to
they
live with this voice.
They were literally reunited. They were able to get a Gestalt into a replicant for Yona.
Now, the reason, again, that the Shadowlord was so desperate to do that is because when Vice did not combine with Noir, which was supposed to put all of the replicants and Gestalts back together, and she has the black scrawl, right? The replicant body of Yona has the black scrawl. That means that the Gestalt, Yona, is relapsing.
Yes.
So he has no more time to wait for the black scrawl to
because if you wait too long, then the Gestalt becomes a shade.
Becomes a shade.
Yeah.
Yona would have become a shade.
Yeah.
And so he was like, there's no more time for this. I have to take the replicant body and reunite it now in order to stop her from relapsing. Right? So he's desperate to save Yona, which is his whole goal from the very first prologue scene has been this. It's one singular focus. Yes. And our replicant version of the character has the same singular focus, but he wants his daughter, who has her own personality in the replicant body, who the Gestalt is saying, I can hear her, I can sense her. There's this depression and sadness and fear and worry, and it's not right for us to do this. And she sacrifices herself to allow that personality. She accepts death. Right?
Yeah.
The Gestalt, Yona, accepts death.
She walks over to the window. Now, this is understood throughout the whole game, but the Gestalts cannot be exposed to sunlight. Well, shades can't, but by extension, Gestalts would not be able to either.
Yeah.
And that's how she kind of does away with herself.
She goes out into the sunlight.
So she just essentially kills herself because she understands the futility of the situation. The replicants think their own thoughts.
Yeah.
You no longer can possibly put a Gestalt into a replicant. They would all have like massive dissonance in their minds of like the replicant life versus the Gestalt life. It's like a multiple personality issue that every single one would have. And she's like, I love you, but I gotta go.
Yep.
So she opens a window and that's it. And Yona. Oh yeah, so then we have to like wake her up, because she's like passed out.
But what really struck with me, this was the scene that landed really, really, it was very resonant in how it landed with me.
Yeah.
Like the way Yona explains this, and just the sense that the secondary theme for me is about the importance of accepting loss, right? Like for those who refuse to accept loss,
very good. Yeah.
they will not accept it. Like, what do they call it? It's like the 5 stages of grief.
Oh yes,
whatever,
acceptance
right?
is the
acceptance
final.
Is like the final stage, And that's kind of like what Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice is all about. It's about acceptance of loss. That's what the game is exploring. And I felt like this was kind of true of this game as well, because Yona is the one who has to explain to her brother or father, like, we're trying to preserve something that was lost so long ago that it's only in continuing to pursue returning back to us what we lost that we are bringing loss to everyone else. We're continually like, and it was the same for our main party. It's like, in order for Nier to get Yona back, you had to lose the King of Facade, you had to lose Emil, you had to lose all the people of the Aerie, you had to kill thousands of shades who are humans along the way to get what you wanted returned to you, because you cannot accept loss. You refuse to accept it. But in the pursuit of that, look at all of this that you did. And even when you get it back, how could it possibly really ever be the same again? How can you just go back? Because the people of the village, you have a problem with them now, and all the things that they lost in the process. You're never going to go back to 5 years ago, 10 years ago, whatever it was, when you and Yona were happy together at home. That life is over. It is lost, and you're never getting it back. And you can either accept that and move on to the next phase of your life and learn how to live with loss, or you can blindly pursue refusing that and make everyone else around you suffer in that pursuit. And both the main character and the Shadowlord were doing that.
In fact, by extension, I think you explained it to some degree, like the shades and how the shades are and why the shades are in general. How a Gestalt becomes a shade is, at least possibly in part, like not accepting loss.
Just refusing to die, refusing to move on.
And just, and you become resentful, and then it just spirals, and it becomes this thing, and you become a monster.
Yes. In the pursuit of refusing to accept the loss, you will become the monster that oppresses and hurts other people and causes more loss and devastation. And this is also true of, in part, like kind of the whole Iraq war. It's like a horrific thing was done to New York, the people of the United States, to the people in particular who were affected in that terrorist attack. And the pursuit of revenge, the pursuit of, I will not accept that you did that to me. I will not accept that. We will not move on from that. We're going to get you back, right? We're going to push, like you were saying, our views onto your country has created a war that has now almost 2 decades
in American history, I think.
2 decades. And what have we accomplished there, other than more and more loss?
Like 500,000 people died, I think, so. It's more than died.
That is the only end of that pursuit of revenge.
It's the only possible thing that can happen. And the effects of that, as you mentioned, how do you just go back? Like, what if, because there's a lot of agitation, and we're getting a little political, but, what if you withdraw all the troops from Iraq now? Now what? You can't just go back to normal after 20 years of destroying a country and killing 500,000 people. You can't just leave and be like, okay, sorry, like we're gonna go back to normal now. We did what we wanted. Saddam's dead and Osama's dead, and now we can come back. And it's like, well, you just made a whole nation of people hate you. They're not gonna live peacefully with you anymore. So that goes to the idea of, what are you gonna do now? When you go back, now what?
And so
things won't be the same.
This just struck me so powerfully. I felt like it all came together in this scene, and Yona was the one to deliver it, and the Shadowlord won't give it up, so you have to end up killing the Shadowlord, and then, like you said, bringing Yona back. And I wish that they had represented this idea a little better in ending A, because they kind of play it off like a happy ending. Like they do just go back, and they live their life, and everything's happy.
Yes, because afterwards we see they're like laying on the grass, but they're young again. I guess the implication is that they live their lives, they die, they're reborn again as replicants again.
Oh, that's actually a good point.
I don't know if that's really, because we'll have to see. But
in the version I played, it was just the father's no longer wearing the mask. I guess Yona is the younger version of Yona.
Yeah, she's the very young.
Okay, that's good to clear up. I was like, maybe she just got a haircut to look like she did before, but you're just saying you see the younger version of them. Okay, so you just see a younger version of them.
So it's either a flashback or it's the future and they were reborn again. In the replicant system.
But how did that happen? Because Devil and Popola are dead.
It's the how that's difficult.
Anyways, the whole point is like
people in the comments will know and they will tell us. We will find out probably as we keep playing.
I do wish that the A ending had incorporated this idea that you can never go back to normal again somehow.
Yeah. I think they purposefully, because this is how Drakengard was. Ending A for Drakengard is a good
ending,
happy, peaceful ending. Yeah. And there's still some tragedy and suffering, but it is what you could expect from a happy ending of a story.
Yeah.
And I think would be Yoko Taro's thing. Like, hey, give people the ending they want first. Then we're going to pile on the real issues and hey, this ain't so happy after all kind of stuff. And that happens later. And my guess is that that's going to be true with Nier as well.
And, Kaine sort of just goes off to do her own thing, as you would expect.
She waves us off. Because we're like, hey, do you want to chill with us? And she looks at her arm and says, I got my own,
stuff to take care of.
So, to take care of.
To take care of. No, exactly. But like you're saying.
Some people will get that.
With a Yoko Taro game, when you see the credits for the first time, the game is not over. In fact, you're really closer to only being about halfway through the game.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
You only got to the halfway point, really. Yeah. So that's what ending B and C and D and the new ending E in the new remaster of Replicant are probably what we're going to be discussing next time, as well as a lot of the world-building lore and character revelations and a lot of tidbits that get revealed in the second playthrough.
Yes.
But we've now at least summarized
We've at least got the base story.
The main events of the story and kind of gotten our feelings out about the execution of those scenes, the technical storytelling part of it. Now it's going to be all about probably the philosophical side of it. And what does it all mean?
The theoretical and the few differences between each playthrough. We're going to be focusing on those and why they did them.
Exactly.
So what should people expect next time? We're going to do B and C, or are we?
Well,
because I actually don't know how long each next additional ending is. Maybe we should do B, C, and D.
I would say we'll shoot for talking about ending B, C, and D next time.
And if E does turn out to be quite short, that's fine. We can go into more of what we were planning on for the last episode of our general answering comments.
Answering comments and just like
general thoughts.
Anything we missed along the way.
Yeah.
And we can kind of talk about ending E. And maybe even some of the DLC content. Because there was even DLC in the original game where you like go into like some of the diary entries of Nier's mother/wife and like find out what happened to that person. And like you said, there's an extra like ship or something like that.
A shipwreck and a whole extra character and
there's a whole lot of additional content,
which was quite good actually.
To the remaster.
Yeah.
So we'll probably go over that stuff in the fourth and final episode of this analysis.
The ending E one.
So that's what I would say. I would say play through to ending B, and you'll either have to choose ending C or D. But then you'll have to play the game
and then play it again, and then do
or
the
have
other.
A save point before then, and then just watch the D ending, right? But the D ending is kind of there's a finality to the D ending that you might want to look into first, because I don't want to spoil it per se, but just be aware that like
it's intense.
There's a meta game save file altering thing that will happen to your game data if you choose ending D, that will make you have to replay the game again from the very beginning.
Oh wow!
Not from the time skip
Yoko Taro is just
great. And if you played Automata, you probably know what I'm talking about.
Well, ending D is the one that Automata goes off of, right? Is off of it near ending D. I believe that's to be the
You might be right.
Yeah.
But anyways, that's all the time we got for today. Thank you for watching/listening. Like I said, next time we'll have new memory cards that are. These are 64 gigs in these here. We're going to have 256 twice in those cameras and once in that one. So we'll never run out of space again. We could make a 5-hour podcast and we'll be good to go. So appreciate you guys. Again, if you appreciate the show, you want to support us, hit us up on Patreon, Subscribestar. Those links are in the description. And we will see you again next month, unless we hit our subscribe or hit our Patreon goal, in which case we might see you in a week. It all depends on you.
Depends on you.
Peace out, guys. We'll see you next time.
Peace.